talk a little bit about the wonder that was Srila Sridhara Maharaja. Well, I guess I'll speak something first, but then I also want to hear from Prema Kishora some of the glories of Srila Sridhara Maharaja. So this is one of the books. Can you hear me? Am I speaking loud enough? This is one of the books that was compiled by disciples of Prabhupada who were followers of Srila Sridhara Maharaja. It's called The Encounters with Divinity. So in the beginning, there's a little about the author. What? So I'll read just a little of this and then I'll speak it. Because when you sit in a group and someone is reading, that's not the best way to have class and pay attention. If someone's speaking, well, you're more likely to pay attention because he can yell at you. Okay? So I happen to have been the one who wrote this about the author. So I begin by saying, to acquaint our readers with the author, we have but to relate some of his transcendental glories. One can easily understand the greatness of an individual by the acts he performs, by the contributions he makes to society. The glories of Srila Sridhar Maharaj are many, and they are all deep, like an ocean of transcendental nectar. I would be so bold as to say, if you haven't tried to collect at least some of the gems of Sridhar Maharaj's conception, what he gave, what flowed through him, you might say. In Prabhupada's words, if I tell you what he said, you will faint. His realizations are very high. That's a direct quote from Srila Prabhupada. If I tell you, because they were talking in Bengali, and afterwards the devotee said, "Oh, what were you talking about?" And Prabhupada said, "If I tell you what Sridhar Maharaj said, you will faint." He has very high realizations. So all those realizations aren't his. Many of them are his. He has his unique contributions that we can't find anywhere else almost. But most of what he passed on is what's coming through the parampara, what's coming through this succession. Not any fancy creation of his own. But he's keeping the door open for that higher flow of Krishna bhakti to enter our hearts. And I touched upon this last time we all met and were talking here, and I might have mentioned that it was a few weeks before his passing away. And I remember this specifically because it happened to be Tripurari Maharaj who was massaging Prabhupada's feet. When Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked him, "Prabhupada, in your absence, is there what can we do about philosophy? Is there anywhere we can go if we need to further an understanding? You've given us all the books and everything, but still questions arise." I'm paraphrasing. In a short question he asked Prabhupada, "Is there anywhere we can go after you if we're lost or confused?" And he said, "Yes, you may go to my godbrother, Srila Sridhar Maharaja in Navadvip." And that was recorded. There were 4 or 5 persons in the room. And indeed, that's what happened in due course. A few months later, everybody in the leadership of ISKCON went to Sridhar Maharaj and told him that Prabhupada has told us to come to you, and we have many questions. You'd think there'd be no questions. There were hundreds of questions. And it started almost, you can say, from day one, but it was pre-authorized maybe a month this was given. Sometimes Prabhupada said things over and over and over and over again, like, "You're not this body." Because probably people needed to hear that over and over and over again. I saw him once on the Vyasa here, Krishna Balaram, and I think I was even fanning or something. Anyway, we were all there and I was there. And Prabhupada said, I am not this body. And I thought, actually, even if you were, it'd be wonderful. Prabhupada was so wonderful that, even if he was, even if that's who he was, right? That presentation, that's who he was. We thought that would have been wonderful. It was so Krishnized, his being, his presence. But some things he never said but once, and this one he never said but once. And it did not go unnoticed or unattended in the beginning, but later it was forgotten. It was forgotten. But I'd be so bold as to say anyone who has not got the proper, has not properly received what Sridhar Maharaj was intended to give to us. By what arrangement? Krishna's and Prabhupada's arrangement. Not by his own. And we all do things on our own. We take some initiative, maybe even a service initiative or whatever. We take some initiative, we do things on our own. We have a preferred size of tilak or whatever it is, however humble we are. Everyone has some preferred initiative. Well, Sridhar Maharaj had no preferred initiative into the preaching of Prabhupada, his God. He had no desire to enter there, to interfere, to become a part of it or anything. He was an admirer from the outside. When many people failed to admire what Prabhupada was doing, the magnitude of what he did, Sridhar Maharaj declared he was a Shaktivesh avatar. Two people declared this. That sound did not come from within this. It came from outside. It came from Yajavar Maharaj, and it came from Sridhar Maharaj. At the disappearance, 10 days after observance of Prabhupada in 1977, Yajavar Maharaj spoke at this one. And there he inferred that Prabhupada was Sridhar. And Sridhar Maharaj confirmed this, and in a particular way, Shakti Vesh, which Shakti? Which Vesh? Vesh means cover. This is called Vesh, dress. We've all got our Vesh, different Vesh, different covers. So, which Shakti Vesh means he's empowered by the Supreme Lord, but the Supreme Lord has many powers. He has many powers. He has Vaikuntha powers too. Once a disciple of Prabhupada approached me and he said, could we consider maybe Prabhupada was Prahlad? Well, that's a Vaikuntha Shakti. And why would we want to relegate Prabhupada to Vaikuntha, even though Prahlad is very important? He stands in the doorway of pure devotion, or at the threshold. Why would we want to relegate Prabhupada's Siddhadeha, his eternal standing in the Leela of Krishna, to Vaikuntha? Why would we want to do that? That means we misunderstand something. And so I replied, I said, no, that would be both just speculation, and it would not be really singing Prabhupada's glories. Very significant to assign him that he's from the Vaikuntha quarter. In this world, any quarter might look good, right? But for a Gaudiya, Vaikuntha is a fall down. The conception. A man is judged, a person, we say man is the habit. Men and women are judged not by their status, where they are now. Because we all struggle in this world in one way or another, with the prabha karma we have and what have you. But if there's to be a judgment on a devotee, it's to be by his ideal. And I touched on this the other day. It's by the ideal that Prabhupada saw in his father after contacting Bhakti Siddhanta. He could see the highest ideal of Gaudiya Vaishnavism in his father. Then he writes he's a pure devotee. You'd be hard-pressed to prove in the Western world that Prabhupada's father was a pure devotee by any other means. He was very much like every other Hindu, and he had a hookah. A hookah. What if Papa here, Pita here, had a hookah? There'd be nobody coming over here then. Nothing. Out. Prabhupada's father had a hookah. Everybody had a hookah. He has one. So that's what those plants are for. So how do we say it? By the ideal. So that instruction was our entry to Sridhar Maharaj. And someone will ask, well, why didn't he keep going? Because the information that was getting obtained wasn't resonating in an elite group of devotees who are 98% no longer here. With those devotees who all fell down in time, they changed the course of not just their lives, but many, many people's lives. They have changed the course. Now, I have seen many Maya come kicking on the door of ISKCON, both in my day in ISKCON, which was a little under 20 years, and afterwards, and I have seen the Vaishnavas beat back all kinds of Maya and disturbances over time. This one, however, keeps knocking on the door, and from inside even. It can't be gotten away with. All kinds of misunderstandings. This Maya, the movements had Mayas before. They dispensed with it. This one, there was no dispense with. And it's always there, because it's part of the eternal arrangement. Just like I know many people who are the disciples, let's say, of Bhakti Prema Kishora Maharaj, who are in the West. And if they don't read the books of our Guru Maharaj Prabhupada, pretty much they're at a great loss. Because we only made, I think, 3 books, two books maybe, of Bhakti Prema Kishora Maharaj in English, and everything else is in Bengali and Sanskrit. So if you learn Bengali and learn Sanskrit, you can listen, read, and hear everything your Guru Maharaj had to say. But if you don't, then where are you going to get your information? Well, classics, which is the way most devotees receive their information. Most devotees aren't big readers. And reading alone is sometimes better off not even reading. The first time I read Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's Gita, I read in the introduction that this book should not be read alone. It should be read in a company of devotees. When I was living in a tree house in an island in Hawaii, there was nobody else. So the first instruction I followed of Prabhupada was not to read the Bhagavad Gita, because there were no devotees. But when you read, you hear your own mind. You hear your own mind. And your own mind is infamous for playing tricks on you, even when hearing the absolute truth. Oh, that makes me remember the changes, which I've only recently become aware of. Unbelievable. Another topic. So the course should have been without disturbance. But disturbance came. And there was objection. And the bulk of Prabhupada's movement separated from Sridhar Maharaj. What is the year? 81? 81, 82 is like snap. It's like seeing ships at sea. But what they fail to understand is, you're the little tugboat lost at sea. And Sridhar Maharaj is this massive like Star Trek ship, mothership. It's going to bring them in. And it snaps. And they go adrift. And now we are 30-some years adrift later. And I am absolutely shocked at the things which have crept in to the greater Hare Krishna movement around the world. Absolutely shocked. So what I did when I wrote this introduction, I just took a look at some of the contributions of Sridhar Maharaj in terms of his writing. So I'll just speak a couple things about each one. You may be already familiar, or maybe not. He wrote a poem called the Sri Prabhupada Padmastavaka. It's 11 verses. I'm not sure how many. I don't remember right now. This song they're prayers to Bhakti Siddhanta, glorification of Bhakti, like pranams to Bhakti Siddhanta. They're written by Sridhar Maharaj. They're chanted in almost every Gaudiya Math in existence. They are the standard. Everyone adopted those prayers. And we tried our best to find it, whether it had been written or what, but we couldn't find it. But it was common knowledge way back in the day that Prabhupada wanted these prayers to Bhakti Siddhanta that Sridhar Maharaj had written to be sung in his temples also. But there is no recorded, written conversation about it. Achyutananda wrote us just the other day, and informed us that he had sung that song. Yeah, in the presence of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada liked it very much, but he was also didn't know of any specific, this is the person that was told. So it was more or less a hearsay, but it's obvious when you see the prayers that they're being very, very natural. Just like painting the Gaudiya Math logo on the front gate of ISKCON in Mayapur. Why would you want to do that? You know, it'd be like me painting the ISKCON lotus and writing ISKCON into it, you know, and putting it on my gate, you know, as to say, look, I am also ISKCON or something. I don't do that. Why would you do that? Unless you wanted people to identify you with that. And who would those people be? His God brothers, who are not all in harmony and in praise of Prabhupada as Sridhar Maharaj was. So this was a very important poem, and was much adored by all the disciples of Bhakti Siddhanta. The next one is the Bhakti Vinod Viradasakam. This is 10 prayers that Bhakti Siddhanta, when he read the prayers, he was shown the prayers, he read the prayers, he said, Sridhar Maharaj did not write these prayers. Everybody was like, oh no, he did. Sridhar Maharaj did not write these prayers. Bhakti Vinod wrote those prayers through him. This is what Bhakti Siddhanta said. So, start to ask, who is this gentleman? Who is Sridhar Maharaj? We hear the praises of Srila Prabhupada. He will do how Babaji Maharaj or someone was there, and he says that Bhakti Siddhanta said, no, you will not go, but he moved his hands where he will go, and he pointed to Prabhupada when he was still a householder in the 1930s. He just first initiation. No, actually, he got first and second initiation in the first initiation. Prabhupada got first and second initiation at once. So anyway, Srila Maharaj was called Shastri Nipuj, scriptural genius. And not just from the point of mundane study, but from the point of transcendence, understanding the inner meaning of Shastra, what is said and what is hidden behind what is said. Very important. And if we want those things, you have two choices. Literally. You can come to Sridhar Maharaj and get those gems, or you can go to the Sahajis and get those gems. You can go either place. The difference is, one has cash inherent value, and the other is worthless. The Sahajiya gems. So, I want to give you one of those gems, and just stop talking right now and say, please read this. And it explains Prema Dhama Deva Stotram, another important contribution of Sridhar Maharaj. Prapanam Jivanamritam is explained here. And finally, the Sri Gayatri Nigudartha, his commentary on the first verse of Gayatri. And this is not just important for Prabhupada followers. This is par excellence for our whole Sampradaya. Because there is no commentary existing on the Brahma Gayatri. Now, you've all heard in Bhagavatam class, from the sound of Krishna's flute came the Gayatri, and Gayatri became the mother of the Vedas in due course. So, if we make a statement from the Vedas, from the Vedanta, and of course we take Srimad Bhagavatam as the commentary on Vedanta, so we make our statement from Vyasa's own commentary, and that is that the supreme ashraya, the supreme shelter of all living beings, is who? Krishna. No. Radharani is the supreme shelter. That's the highest message of Bhagavatam. And that is revealed in between the pages of Bhagavatam, not directly, but it is referred there. So that is the conclusion of the Gaudiya conception of Bhagavatam, that the ultimate shelter, ashraya, the living entity, is indeed the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani, and it's called Radhadasyam. So, someone may say, well, if that be true, then you have to show how that's present in the Gayatri. Because it's the Gayatri that gave birth to the Vedas, and it's the Gayatri that contains all the conceptions of the Vedas. So this one you speak of, you have to demonstrate. So in our Sampradaya, it was said that Jiva Goswami wrote the commentary for Brahma Gayatri, demonstrating that this is also, Brahma Gayatri leads to Radha-dasya. The service of Radharani is the ultimate achievement. But it was lost. Nobody has it. There's some indications in some people's commentaries, maybe like Vishwanath or something, it's thick. Enough to know there was, but it's gone. And Sridhar Maharaj reproduced that commentary. It's called Gayatri Nigudartha. And he does that in the most amazing way in establishing the Gaudiya conception in Brahma Gayatri. And then there are these other things. The last one I mentioned is the prayers to, it's called the Srimad Rupa Pada Raja Prarthana Dasakam. Prayers to Rupa Goswami. You find out something in this group of prayers which is very important. And I'll get to that in a minute. But for now, I want to tell you something about, or share with you something rather. Remember, I'm not telling you anything. I'm just sharing something. If you don't believe it, go check it. That's the best way to do things. If you believe it, well, that's also good. But it pays to double check anyway. Don't be blindly following anybody. Even Prabhupada said, don't blindly follow me. Understand, not just go in the queue. Okay, so now I want to say something about Prema Dhama Deva Stotram. That's this book. And tell you how time flies and memory goes. And I was reading this just yesterday, and I was going, wow, I'm sure glad they made this book, you know. And I was looking all through it. I forgot I made this book. Well, Ramdas and Mandala paid for it, but I did everything else. So time flies, you forget. You know, it's just busy one service to the next service to the next service. This is so important. But I want to bring your attention to verse 42 of this. And hidden in this, or not hidden, it's there in this verse, is a very valuable gem, necessary in the overall panoramic view of Gaudiya Siddhanta. The overall panoramic view of Gaudiya Siddhanta. This is a very important one. I'm very bad with Sanskrit, even at my best I'm bad, so I'm not going to sing the Sanskrit. It's a beautiful tune, Prema Dhama Deva Stotram. You know, we learned that tune because we heard the tune. But I've shown this to Sanskrit scholars in India, and they just go, this is the first verse, this verse. You just show them, take it to a Sanskrit university and show them, they go, and I'm thinking, you've been to the mud? How would you learn that tune? You know, Sanskrit, the tune is written right there in the meter of the Sanskrit. Very beautiful meter of this book. Anyway, to the point. While he was visiting, speaking of Mahaprabhu, this is all glorification of Mahaprabhu. While he was visiting the various places of pastimes in Vrndavana, the Lord arrived at the famous tamarind tree, which had been existing since the Dwapara Yuga. So, we reckon that tree was still here when all of us came, but about 24 years ago, the Emily tree disappeared, departed. And all that's left of it is the wood trunk. And some people were saying it's very inauspicious that after 5,000 years, we have to witness the disappearance of the tamarind tree. Now, of course, it's replanted. Another tree is growing there, and the big wood one is still standing there. They say from Dwapara Yuga, that tree. He, Mahaprabhu, sat beneath its branches. And when he saw the dancing waves of Yamuna, the memory of the Jalakeli was aroused within him, and he became immersed in thoughts of those confidential, sporting pastimes of Lord Krishna with the gopis. In that secluded place, undisturbed, his whole being became pervaded with thoughts of Srimati Radharani, her beauty and her sweetness. His place, this place, okay, now I'm going to skip this sentence and come back to it. I sing with joy the unending glories of my golden Lord, Gaura-Sundar, the beautiful and divine abode of pure love. So I dropped this one sentence, which is the gem. So, everyone we know about Anarthas. Do you know about anything? You know where it is. It's hard to find these days. But on the program, you see it's all done up, and if you've been in there, and also people have different memories of that place according to who they are in there. But ultimately, why is that place? That place. Why is it important? Why did it get some status? Is it just another place on the program or some status? And no, if we went there in the program, our first days in Vrndavana, then someone probably told us that this is the place where Mahaprabhu came, and he would sit here daily and he would see the Jamuna and remembering so many things of his Vrndavana Lila. Is that correct? I mean, so do we hear anything more? Please inform me, because I don't know. I'm not on these programs anymore for almost 3 decades, so I don't know what people hear. I'm talking about people, I mean Western devotees, what they hear, particularly from the West, like we are, most of us. Okay. Is there any other importance to that place that you can know of? Okay. So here's the line. This is the place of origin of Gaura-tattva. For it was here that Shama Sundar was totally absorbed in ecstatic love for Srimati Radharani, and the two became one in eternity at India. Now that is certainly if we have some sense, feeling for the internal flow of Krishna consciousness and what makes any place significant, then this understanding of the significance of Anarthas is upgraded massively from just a place where Mahaprabhu happened to sit under a nice shade tree and see the Jamuna, which would be more like I would pick a tree. I just look for some good place to sit down and relax and see the Jamuna. But he is drawn to that place for a completely different reason. It happens to be a big tree, it happens to be shade, it happens to be on the Jamuna, but it happens to be where Radha and Krishna, after the Rasa Lila, Rasaraj Mahabhav Dvaya Guru. Rasaraj is Krishna. Mahabhav Radharani is that place, Dvaya Guru. That is where they became one in eternity. Chaitanya Charitamrita begins by saying the absolute truth divided himself into two to enjoy rasa. Now again, the two have become one. So in eternity, Mahaprabhu is there, eternally. Depends on where you start your reading, who came first. Radha and Krishna and Mahaprabhu as an evolvement of love. They merged together, two in one. Or he is originally one. He divides himself as two to enjoy rasa. That's what Chaitanya Charitamrita says. Then again, he has become one. Again, that word again, back he becomes one. So in some people, some Vaishnavas have more emphasis on Krishna Lila and all things Krishna. And others will have maybe even more emphasis in Mahaprabhu Lila to the ultimate extreme, that he is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, from which Radha and Krishna have come. And Radha and Krishna have again come back to this one. So this is like a circle. It's eternal. Now, we say Krishna and Rama, it doesn't matter which one came first, it's a circle going on. Well, that's okay for general people. But if we think that it doesn't matter, and Ram Lila and Krishna Lila, they're all the same, then we're on our way to become Pakka Hindus. Hindus have no discrimination. They're just munjas, gone Kanishta, gone gold-plated. Now that's Hindus. And Prabhupada said if you scratch them long enough, you get to the gold plating, and you'll get to the Mayavadi underneath. Hinduism. right here in the pledge. There's some, there are people here that don't even know who Rupa Goswami was. There are people in this town that never heard of Rupa Goswami. And some of them are on ashrams, Mayavadis. I used to have an ashram right next to my place. They were the Ramnadis. They look like Sri Vaishnavas. They worship Vishnu for moksha, for liberation. I never heard of Rupa Goswami. What are they doing here? Who should be here? Vrndavana, right conception. If you're a gem collector, this is a gem. Next time you go there, you know that this is the place where Radha and Krishna became one, under that trunk of that tree. And Mahaprabhu sat there, remembering all these things. So, these are the things we are to remember. So it was nice that for 30 years I could remember that, yes, that's where Mahaprabhu sat when he came here. And that was of importance. But it just got a massive upgrade when I understood something of the eternal Leela of Krishna which took place there. That's why I'm saying Mayapur is caught in a pincer movement of wrong conceptions and right conceptions. You have Radha Madhava and the Ashtashakis, and then right beneath them you have now little Radha Madhava, which was originally there but then gone. And Mahaprabhu was originally there and gone and came back. So you have Radha and Krishna and the Ashtashakis, and then you have Radha Madhava and Mahaprabhu. And that represents this. The two become one. So what's that got to do with the huge 7-foot Ashtashaki Leela in the background? How does that connect? And what's it doing in Mayapur? Why is that there? Why would you establish one altar, which is the highest conception in Gaudiya? Is Mahaprabhu standing with Radha and Krishna. This is given by Bhakti Siddhanta. And that's why Prabhupada in Mayapur, he put the deities like that. You go across to the mud, that's what we see. Govinda Sundar, Govinda Sundar, Gandharva Govinda Sundar. Everywhere, and even in Calcutta. Even in the Calcutta ISKCON temple, Prabhupada established Radha Govinda, but with Mahaprabhu. Not Gaura-lila, Mahaprabhu. Why? Well, people should ask why. Because Nityananda cannot stand on the same altar, the same level as Srimati Radharani. Not even Lord Nityananda can stand there. And it says something. It's not just doll decorations. Those would be cool. Let's do it this way. Let's do it that way. Like one day in Nairobi, Prabhupada came in and the Gaura-lila was separated by about 1.5 meters. You know? They were over here, separated on the altar. Prabhupada banged his stick. Everyone comes running. No. Not like that. Together. They are together. They're not separate. And this happened many times with Radha and Krishna. We're not decorating something for our pleasure. We're decorating Krishna for his pleasure. There are many nice things in the books of Srila Sridhara Maharaja. And if we have proper regard for them, and if we can find some service connection to the source, and this is a big thing. This is a big thing. There's no escaping service. You know, it's just like there's no grabbing and replenishing your stocks, my stocks, of anything, and thinking we actually got it. You know, when we go to steal the conception, we means not offer proper respect, recognition, appreciation, and if we can, some service. If that's not there, and we try to go away with any part of the Vedas, like a Mayavadi reading the Bhagavatam, what does he get? Gyan, 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 gyan. No bhakti, no bhakti. Bhakti has strings attached, and that's service. So, but a type of service is proper glorification. And showing proper respect is also in that same line. Like, people ask me about the West, well, what about these arranged marriages in India and Hare Krishnas and all this? stuff. And I say, well, first off, the dowry is the woman's, the girl's share of the what would be given to the sons is given to the daughter in dowry. That's her share of the family wealth. She gets to take that. That's originally the idea of dowry. That's her share of the family wealth. She's got to live in another house, so she takes this dowry. And what was the point? Space of time.
They ask you about arranged marriages.
Oh yeah, I said, you see, first is duty. These arranged marriages are accepted out of duty. It is a duty of the parents to find the wife or the husband for their daughter or son. It's the duty of the son and the daughter to accept the arrangement of the parents. First duty. And then develops respect. You like it, you lump it, doesn't matter. Do your duty. And if you do your duty, it develops into respect. And respect develops into love. And there's a much higher, less divorce rate amongst arranged marriages than there is amongst love marriages, because love marriages tend to decline. Whereas arranged marriages, they build upon something higher, duty. And that develops respect, and that can also develop into genuine love that is felt amongst humans, in family, etc. Children, family, wife, etc. So duty is important. So it is the duty of one who receives knowledge, and this isn't any gyan, this is bhakti gyan. This is, and to you now, that might not sound like a very significant thing. Oh yeah, that's interesting or anything. But if you're in the whole, what do they call the chain link of what's going on in the devotional world, on the internal plane, then that little piece of information that lies here in one sentence is a quintessential value for you to know in its deepest sense. Because the deepest sense of Mahaprabhu's movement, as I said the other day, is not just Sankirtan and book distribution and these things. That is not the highest sense of Mahaprabhu's movement. He's for himself, foremost. It's a Christian conception. In the last week, I've had 3 people ask me to pray for him. How are we supposed to pray? So I looked it up. I mentioned it last week, and I looked it up in Bhakti Rasa Vijayasana. The nature, the essential character of Vaishnava prayer. And none of it had anything to do with getting free from disease. Not dying now, maybe later, of course, but not now. Or, getting out of transit when you're stuck in Istanbul in the middle of a coup. But what was interesting, what it should be. And of course, you can imagine, glorification of the Supreme Lord is paramount. But even before that, let me see if I can remember the choice. Total submission. Your prayer should have one of, there are 5 or 6 things. 1, 2, or all of the above is what a Vaishnava prayer contains. And any Vaishnava prayer by Bhajino, Prabhupada, Sridhar, anything you're going to read, it's going to contain these elements. And never will you find one for health, wealth, and adjusting the things of this world so I'll be a little better off. That's not in the manner of Vaishnava praying. So why are devotees and candlelight vigils? Now I can understand all-night kirtan, but what's that's the whole thing, they kill terrorists, so everybody shows up the next day, lights candles, for the innocent people. It represents something. In who? In Christianity. It's a Christian thing. It's not a Vaishnava thing. The candlelight vigil is Kartik, 1 month offering lamps for the Lord's Prayer, not lighting lamps because some whack job killed a bunch of innocent people. What did those candles burning have to do with anything? It's just some sentiment. So sentiment, okay, but where'd that sentiment come from? It came from Christianity, and its influence is there in Vaishnavism, not just in little things like that, in a lot of things. In a lot of things. Especially when a group of a group of men meet, the collective group is a manifestation of Prabhupada. I forget which Nicaea Council that came from, but that's a total Catholic one. bishops get together, and they still practice it today. They elect a new pope. The total group of bishops represents the will of God, and they pick a pope. No wonder people are atheists in this world, you know. Any intelligent person listens to this stuff and goes, wait a minute, the last pope, he was the will of God? And oh, this stuff, you gotta be kidding me. People just like, excuse me, sir. No, actually, Christianity has done more to spread atheism than any other thing in the world, because their arguments for the existence of God are as lame as they get. They're as stupid as they get. The world is 5,000 years old. All these things. Animals don't have souls. Oh, just all kinds of stuff. I'm sorry if I bored you any time. A very silent bunch here. I don't know what's going on. If my entry into the property is any success of today's lecture, no comments necessary, please. Not a lecture. I don't give lectures. Our little group, we try not even to use the word preaching, because that's another Christian word. Preaching. Pravachan isn't exactly preaching. Pravachan is speaking the glories of the Lord. And preaching is down the, like, hey, don't preach to me, you know. Preaching, they use it in the world. Oh yeah, he came into the country club, he was really preaching that organic stuff, you know. It means to jam people with some idea. But another word is very popular in our time. It's called, and you use it yourself and you see it, especially if you're on Facebook and such things, it's called sharing. And sharing is much different. People are very comfortable. When you say, come in here to talk, and such Swami is going to share his experiences. Well, people are really into that. But when it's lecture, even lecture is like, button up, pen and paper, stay in the back, hope he doesn't see me, you know, like, this is the way it is, you know. Lectures, you know, teachers, they're not to be argued with. So anyway, so I'm not preaching to you, I'm just trying to share some things with you that many devotees in the world have and experienced, found. And in this instance, Srila Sridhar Maharaj being the guiding light, so to speak, to borrow from our Christian brothers, to be the guiding light in our journey. Because there has been a lot of deviation, and I think even top people are ready to admit that now. I meet top leaders and they go, oh, we're not ISKCON. And I'm like, what? You're a guru in ISKCON, you're a genius. Well, we're not really ISKCON. I mean, what does it come to be? What happened to the pride? Huh? We're in ISKCON, I'm ISKCON. And I was like, hey. Even gurus say, we're not really in ISKCON. Biggest gurus in ISKCON, tell me that. Well, what are you in? You know, it's just like, so, but I guess I don't know what to say other than people are recognizing something's wrong, or some things are wrong, not that everything is wrong, but some very important things are wrong. And because they are wrong, like if you don't get the tulsi to grow in the pot, you put a pot out here and don't plant tulsi in it, weeds will grow in it next, unless you're lucky a jasmine pops up. You know, it's like if you don't fill your cup with milk, because the atmosphere is full of ink, your cup will fill with ink. So because of rejecting the right thing, the reaction is they have to accept the wrong thing. There's no neutral ground. It's like, push this away, this comes in. It's just like that memory foam, you know. It doesn't forget anything. So, and I've seen it over and over again. The year that Sridhar Maharaj is, you know, all those books around here, they were selling self-urine therapy books from the bookstore. Whoa! Does anybody connect the dots? Reject the nectar of Sridhar Maharaj and drink your own urine next season. It's like, no, I've seen it. You know, books become popular that are just like, you're kidding me. Oh my God. Guru Bob could be the only thing to make that book popular. That means because the disciples will follow the guru, and his writings will be appreciated by them. But when looked at by a scope, as a greater body of, say, not institutional people, but Vaishnavas, then the book may be seen to have no intrinsic value for the progress of bhakti. In fact, it might have something that's bad. And why would you want to take that? Why did they even make that? And it all goes back to rejecting the right thing. So many wrong things have been accepted. And I was shocked. You know, this change book thing, I never followed it because we are isolated for 22 years in South India. That's a long time. 22 years. And most of your life. We've been isolated just doing our thing. And I heard about this change books. Well, we already had all Prabhupada's books before all that started. So, yeah, whatever. I thought, man, they're not going to change the meaning. They're probably just putting commas and, you know, misspelled words and stuff, you know. And so I never paid much attention to it, but when it came to buying new books, because more people, I wanted to buy the original ones, not the changed ones, just as a matter of principle. And I didn't know anything about the changes. Now I'm in total uproar. The changes could deviate you in your spiritual life at a critical time, and you're lost. You're putting such things which are just totally fabricated to keep people in the society. And it's just injecting society consciousness, not Krishna consciousness. And that one is Prabhupada is saying, you may see or feel, what is the word that he used? Hodgepodge devotees?
Pseudo.
Pseudo. He said, you may see or you may feel that the Hare Krishna movement is filled up with pseudo devotees. If that's the case, and then where is it? Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Yeah. Yes.
Madhya, and he says, you might see that the Hare Krishna movement is, who's he talking about? He's talking about his movement. It's filled up with pseudo devotees. In that case, you may take direct shelter of the spiritual master. And he phrases that, and you may, what did he say? Be with the spiritual master? Mm-hmm. You may be with your spiritual master. He's saying independent of the society. Now they've injected, it says, Prabhupada says, you may see that the Hare Krishna movement is filled up with pseudo devotees. Then they inject, but you should stay in the institution. Then Prabhupada speaks. You can take shelter of your spiritual master, meaning you can live independent of the chaos and still be safe and be in Krishna consciousness. But now they've injected, but that's got to be in the society. Well, why is that? In other words, if the guru leaves, don't leave. You stay. It's all society conscious building. And that's a problem. That's a problem. Especially for people who face a real situation where the guru has left Krishna consciousness or been defrocked or whatever they call it. And they feel cheated, they feel lost, and the solution is beginning. That's all right, you're in the society. Society, they're stretching that when Prabhupada says, you know, well, two things. Krishna's in the womb of ISKCON, right? And the other one is, he said, ISKCON is my body. Right? How many times did he say, I'm not this body? So you got two Prabhupada says. One, he said, ISKCON is my body, and then he said, I'm not this body. So think about it. I don't want you to think I'm not preaching against ISKCON. I'm talking about history and our sampradaya. And so you have to sometimes say things as they are in order to understand what's what and what you're talking about. So I'm not going to go and study them all, but there is a website I found. It's got all the changes, and it's probably enough to just go, make you shake your head like, what are these people thinking about? What's the future going forward for people who just joined an institution? After all the people who knew Prabhupada, Srila Maharaj, Maharaj in the West are gone. And you've just got all these people that you trained up wrong. And they'll look at that and they'll say, Prabhupada said, stay in the institution. It's right here in his book. Understand? And then you think, to stay in the institution, but it's not necessarily so. Prabhupada didn't come and appear in the institution. He already existed. He made the institution afterwards. Sridhar Maharaj wasn't about the institution. The institution it's the necessary, almost evil, the institution. The necessary evil. How do we preach without an institution? Prabhupada also says we need the institution to spread Mahaprabhu's movement. For Mahaprabhu's movement. To spread Krishna consciousness. Not to create a cartel or a mafia, and no, we're the only ones. But the danger for everybody is the same. Deviation. Taking in things that aren't genuine. I've seen a lot of that. The Sriya, it's called the Sriya Sukha story. That Sukadeva Goswami is the pet parrot of Radharani. This part of the story infiltrates the bona fide story. Sukadeva Goswami was a parrot. It starts as a parrot story. And Lord Shiva is speaking the Gita, not the Gita. He's speaking Krishna Katha. And Parvati is asleep, drowsing, what do you call it? Napping. And Shiva is speaking Bhagavatam. And Parvati's napping. And then he asks Parvati some questions. And the parrot who's been there hears all this. Is the answer? And he sees that this parrot, and he speaks something of the Bhagavatam. So then Shiva thinks, no, I'm not going to have some parrot running around speaking Bhagavatam. This is not the work of parrots, right? So he wants to terminate the parrot. So Shiva approaches to kill the parrot, and the parrot takes off, and Shiva takes off and chases him, and the parrot flies into the mouth of Vyasadev's wife. Some feathers, right? And that's the pregnancy of Vyasadev's wife, the Sukha, and then stays there for 16 years. So we trace this down to the Adivadi Sampradaya. They're the ones that originate the story that that parrot was actually Radharani's parrot, and it was sulking, and it left, kind of like in the other story of the parrots in the Bhagavatam. They come and sit on a branch, and they're singing. So they borrow from that kind of a story and say that that's Shri Asuka, Shri meaning Radha's parrot. This is all born out of the part about being Radha's parrot is all born out of the Sahajya community. This Adivadi group. They're the copper plate brothers and all that. The rest of the part of the story, Srila Sridhar Maharaj himself tells. It took me 20 years to find that tape. And he tells the story, missing the part that's Radharani's parrot, and concludes and gives reference from Bhaktivinoda Thakur that nobody knows who Sukadeva Goswami was before this moment. And when he left, although his guru and his param guru were there, Vyas and Narada were there, when he got up and finished the speaking, was all over, he just turned around and walked into the jungle and disappeared. Nobody knows where he went. Nobody knows. Sridhar Maharaj says, nobody knows where he came from, and he went back into the unknown. And he is the example of causeless mercy. And he quotes Bhaktivinoda. Like an example of causeless mercy, right from the forest. Make this all happen. This entity. How he enters, this is all just Krishna's arrangement. He has no prior, and he says he has no position in Vrndavana. Sukadeva Goswami. Came from the unknown, went back into the unknown. It's like the postman that just delivered your brand new safe deposit box or something, or you ordered some gold online and a whole bunch of gold coins just arrived. The guy who brought it's gone. It's like, wow, where'd you go? Give him some for some. Came, it's gone. Nobody knows it's there. So that kind of did the story of he's Radharani's parrot. But then that wasn't good enough. We had to find out where this comes from, because Tirtha Maharaj's group, Tirtha Maharaj over there, Tirtha Maharaj, they accepted it. So many people say, Gopal Champu. We shredded it. There's nothing anywhere in any bona fide Gaudiya literature that says Sukadeva is the parrot of Vrndavana. But that is massively popular, especially it gained ground through Narayana Maharaj's people. That was a super story that ISKCON didn't have, so that story would put them at a disadvantage. And then they start telling the story. Shiva and all these people start telling that story, and it's been told to thousands of people. It's totally bogus. Not totally bogus. Part of the story is true, and it ends in a completely different way than what the additive Sahajiya part is. We found out many additives, like Jesus and the Vedas during the British period, interpolations in what's Brahma Vaivarta Purana, or one of those Puranas that speaks a lot about the future and things, the past, the future. It's one Bhavishya Purana. Yeah, I think it's Bhavishya. They put all these verses, Isha, somebody called Isha from the Middle East, and these are all stuck in during periods of time. The Christians did that and stuck Jesus into the Jewish writings of Josephus. They just stuck in a verse that talks about Jesus. It's not there. They put it in 1,000 years later because there's no evidence of Jesus. There's not one single word that mentions his name. There's nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just books that are written hundreds of years later. Very interesting. No historical account of that person. But it's true, Bhakti Siddhanta's 64 rounds was the standard. Even Mahaprabhu's time, it was 64 rounds. The only thing that's going to take the place of that is engagement. If we have engagement, because ISKCON means 24 hours engagement. So you're supposed to be so burned at the end of the day from service, means tired, that your actual activity of sleeping is a service to rejuvenate yourself, to wake up in the morning and do it again. There is 24. The Sahajis want to meditate on flower gardens and all this kind of stuff. But if you ever been to their temples, deities are usually neglected, scrubbing them, mopping them. They don't have a clue. They don't clean nothing. But they sit around and meditate on the flower gardens and making this and doing that. But you can so for devotees to think that you're engaged in something lesser is a total misunderstanding of the sadhana of Raganuga Bhakti. There is a higher sadhana, and that's nirjan bhajan. And you don't have to move your lip even. Your heart is just there. You're doing everything, services through the name to Radha and Krishna, the name non-different than the Leela. Such entry is there for nirjan bhajan bhaktas. I haven't seen them around lately. We belong to the Scrubbanam Mappanam Sampradaya. You know that one? We made a sloka in English Sanskrit at Radha Damodar. We put it up. It said, Shravanam Kirtanam, Damodar Bhajanam. In other words, hearing and chanting is our bhajan to Damodar. Shravanam Kirtanam, Damodar Bhajanam. Scrubbanam Mappanam, Damodar Sevanam. Scrubbanam, cleaning. Mappanam, scrubbing and mappanam, right? So one day, these two big pundits, these shastris, are in front of the sloka having a whole debate, of the Sanskrit structure. And they're looking at the scrubbanam. That's right. Mappanam. And the Goswamis, they loved it. It was there for years. And finally,
still there.
Where is it now?
It's in the corner.
We're going to put it in the bookstore.
Reprinted, it's faded now.
Yeah. Scrubbing and mopping them. So, that scrubbing and mopping them that we do, Prabhupada told one artik in Vrndavana is worth 1,000 artiks outside. And he's talking about LA, New York, outside our temples. Also, he was very clear, Krishna is only worshipped in Vrndavana. All Radha Krishna deities in ISKCON temples are actually Lakshmi Narayan. Krishna never leaves Vrndavana. So, we have our Radha Madhava in South India, but our mood of worship is Aishvarya, outside. Aishvarya is everything. In Prabhupada's LA, it's Aishvarya worship. And it's not supposed to change into some rasic worship. It's Aishvarya. It's a worship of God. Krishna, on the other hand, is here in Vrndavana, and that same worship takes on other sentiments, which cannot be read properly by the world. So you can't show Vrindavan sentiments, actually, out there in the world. They don't fly, in other words. The world isn't the suited place. Even Kurukshetra failed to provide the proper place. You know, you heard the story, not story, but the incident when when Krishna goes to Kurukshetra, at one point the Vrajavasis go there also. And first Krishna meets Nanda Maharaj and the cowherds and the Vatsalya section. He appeases all the parental section and friends and everything. And then there is a meeting, and he meets there with Srimati Radharani. But they cannot progress in their pastimes because the environment is not proper. Krishna cannot perform his intimate pastimes with his devotees outside Vrindavan. Nowhere. At Kurukshetra, aside. So it doesn't happen there. At Dwarka, some more favorable atmosphere for an intimate relation with his devotees, but still, it's a dabar. It's like darshan of the king. Like we're supposed to see the deity as we were going to see a king. When you go to see a king, you don't go to see a king. You listen to the old, you will present yourself before the king. So how you look, everything, you're the one being seen. So actually darshan is not you seeing Krishna. Now that's there, of course. But the more important part from us is how much we can see Krishna, is Krishna seeing us. And when Krishna sees us, and his pure vision corresponds with our pure heart, then we can see Krishna. But otherwise, if he doesn't see purity in us, we don't have the purity to see him. I remember once I liked to think of it as some sort of a realization. It was quite a long time ago, and I was in Sankirtan in New York, and the Mangalarti Radharani seemed to just be smiling and unbelievable. And it just seemed like she was smiling so bright. You know, Mangalarti in those days, just the deity lights were on. I don't know how they do it now. But, and I said, she's not smiling at me. I could understand that, and most of my Sankirtan partners and people around here, we were all struggling with the modes of nature, struggling with our senses. And I said, she's definitely not smiling at me. And then you just turn your head and see Prabhupada on the Vyasa and go, yes, of course she's smiling. And how important it is not to block Prabhupada's vision of the Vyasa. I don't know if they do that anymore. But he, at Mayapur, even had ropes put up that you should not, nobody should be between the Vyasa and Prabhupada. Even during Guru Puja with 1,000 devotees, he made ropes to put up, and they went all the way down so that no one could get in this way to the Vyasa. And you would crowd around him, and even in a Delhi Pangal, once I went to serve Prabhupada, I had my back to the deities, Gaura-nitai deities. I leaned forward. Don't put your back to the deities. Sorry, Prabhupada. He was very conscious of these things. So, Prabhupada enthusiasm cannot overstep its bounds. And I'm not just talking about standing in a walkway between the Vyasa and here. There are many obstructions where we may, in our enthusiasm, find that we're actually doing the wrong thing and getting in the way. And Sridhar Maharaj said, the road to hell is also paved with good intentions. That's not good enough. Just like being independent of ISKCON, there's no guarantee that you will not fall down or some problem might come, right? So we have to be diligent. We have to be diligent. Srila Maharaj said, follow in the footsteps, and everybody said, yes, let's follow the steps. And then, no. Exactly. Like, now follow in the footsteps, and he says, yeah, Prabhupada's up there somewhere, I'm behind, I'm coming up, it's just like, it's vague. But he was like, no, it means foot by foot, exactly in the footsteps. Or you're just making an analogy. Follow closely. And he was seeing the kind of development which was 10 years after Sridhar Maharaj. Sridhar Maharaj lived 10 years approximately more than Prabhupada, and Srila Maharaj 10 years more than Sridhar Maharaj. And after that, it's kind of, it depends on where you're situated. For me, and many people like me, we got what we got. And we don't expect to see another such guardian angel to come into our midst to again ratify what is to be done, what is the right conception of good behavior, sadachara, pravachara, proper behavior, proper siddhanta. We think that if we didn't get it now, there's no more chances, at least personally speaking. There isn't a person who I can find in the world who can inspire me equal to Prabhupada, Srila Maharaj, and Srila Maharaj, although I respect many devotees for their preaching. Not just their preaching, but their living, their life, their service, themselves included. But on the level of guru, yes, I got what I got, and that's all that Krishna said. It's like, make the best of it or do without. Everybody else, the books are the biggest saving grace, because just like the Prabhupada gives people a chance to hear. And we do see that the sound of Srila Maharaj resonates with people. The millennial Hare Krishnas, it seems like that's the age group. I'm not so sure about the old folks. Set in their ways, I don't know. Should we have some question and answer talk, or do we want to do something?
Hear something from.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Now, let me say one thing. I value Prema Kishora's association. In that when I was still, wherever I was so unprepared to come to the association of Sridhar Maharaj that even people drugged me there twice. When they let go of me, it was like it was on a rubber band. I just back to the bazaar, across the river, back in my room, like, don't even remember going there. Literally. But it was recorded twice. And so, during those times when, I was still in a deep fog, and couldn't be drugged out of that fog, they were way out in the fog, and people like yourself, and Sudhir, and Sagar, and others who were there, hadn't have led the way, well, the rest of us would have just festered in the fog and never got out. Much appreciation for Prema Kishora Prabhu. And mainly, and I'll hear something of significant wonder from his lips regarding Srila Sridhar.
Actually, what you've recounted, meaning the work that we've done in relationship to collecting all of Srila Maharaj's siksa in the form of the tapes and reproducing them, that is probably the most valuable work that can be done, because that's the preservation of the jewels that Srila Maharaj gave. And that's what we. It's like why we're feeling so much discomfort in relationship to Srila Prabhupada's works is because they're being adulterated.
Yeah.
And that adulteration is a disturbance to what actually Prabhupada came to give. Right? And when that is lost, then there's no limit to the changes that can actually take place. It just goes on and on and on and on, and that's why we saw that when Paramadvaita Maharaj asked the question of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, can we copyright your books? Srila Sridhar Maharaj retorted immediately. He said, my words are the property of the Vaishnavas. He didn't say of the Sikh Chaitanya Saraswati. He didn't say of this person, that person, or anybody. He said they are the property of the Vaishnavas, which is understood to mean that is the property, that is his property or her property, and that's meant for whoever's a sincere seeker to be able to have access to. So, our first meeting with Srila Sridhar Maharaj was a very meeting in his physical presence. He was sitting in that famous chair.
Yeah.
And I had only listened to Srila Prabhupada. I was a Srila Prabhupada fanatic. Because especially after Prabhupada, during Prabhupada's manifest and after, when all the turmoil hit the fan, actually, even before, just before Prabhupada was leaving, we all wanted to go and have darshan with Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada wanted us to come there.
Yeah.
Right? And then the order came that you can't leave, you have to stay to maintain the temples. And we were like, it's like, we were in our minds thinking, Prabhupada's going and we're staying here, okay, we're doing seva, so that's what is really important. That was justified. We tried to justify it within themselves. And we were out distributing books when the news came. We were in Port Authority. And the person came and I said, when the door opened, I said, they're coming to tell us to see what And when I came back to the West 55th Temple, I sat in this room, I lit up all this incense, and they couldn't see anything. It was this far. It was just smoke. And I think Pragosh came in, and I told him, I said, now the turmoil is going to begin. This is exactly what it says. Now the turmoil is going to begin. And it did begin. And there was no light for, we were lost, actually, in a way, because we had some personal association with Srila Prabhupada. We had his books, the Shiksha. We met Srila Prabhupada maybe on 30 or 40 various occasions when I was going to different places and we were distributing books or in Mayapur, Vrndavana, Hyderabad, or wherever. But we didn't have a lot of that personal association with Srila Prabhupada. Meaning he gave us personal instructions. Do like this is who you are, I know who you are, and I want you to do this. So that in coming back to Srila Sridhar Maharaj, when I first met him, that was the question I asked him. I said, after the disappearance of the spiritual master, it says in the Bhagavatam that Super Soul manifests before the sincere disciple. So I said, how are we to understand this? So I guess that was like a question that was something that Srila Sridhar Maharaj got very, very intense about. And he spent 2 hours non-stop talking about Guru. And at the end of it, I was just sitting there like this. Right? And I didn't blink my eyes. I was so enwrapped with what he was saying. And that was the connection at that point. Right? And then he bent over and he looked at me and he said, do you understand?
Do you understand?
Do you understand this? Have you understood what I said? And my immediate response was, what is coming through you And what came through Srila Prabhupada, that same spirit, that same taste, flavor is there. And I just put my head in this way. And of course, you know, he took care of us because we were coming there to stay there. We weren't coming to leave. I had no intention of leaving. And Maharaj told me a few days later, he said, you know, if you connect with me, they will not take you back. So I told him, whatever it takes to keep your connection, I will do.
Right.
So,
No, what he told Vidagda, he told this boy Vidagda, he said, tomorrow will be initiation, and you are being offered second. You don't want to miss this opportunity.
well,
Don't miss the opportunity.
what I saw from Srila Sridhar Maharaj, from the time, the wave that came, I guess just when we started to, when the devotees at our time started to come, Maharaj was very, very reluctant to make any formal connection with anybody from Islam, meaning to give initiation. And I come there and I asked I was asking Srila Sridhar Maharaj for sannyas. Sridhar told me.
Right away? When you came here?
Yeah. Sridhar told me in Los Angeles, Srila Sridhar Maharaj not giving sannyas anymore. That's what he told me in LA. But I had come there to connect with Srila Sridhar Maharaj on that basis. That wasn't, you know, that was whatever the illusory energy was throwing up in my face. But the real point was to connect with Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Right. And Maharaj was, I was asking almost every day. Maharaj wouldn't, I was watching him every move, and when he wanted a glass of water, I would see it, and I would try to get him a glass of water, but he wouldn't accept a glass of water. He wouldn't take any service. It was very, you know, it was like to the point where he wanted to, he was extracting, do you want this or don't you want this? What is the intensity of your devotion? How much are you willing to sacrifice? How much are you willing to sacrifice? Now Sridhar Maharaj was there, he was totally like, you know, and his association was very helpful at that time because he was, you know, a sannyasi who, from Srila Prabhupada, who had undergone a lot of tapasya, meaning he had served Srila Prabhupada personally here, and he was a Vrndavana temple president. He had gone to, after Prabhupada's disappearance, you know, they just allocated him to that, you know, whatever it was.
It ended up being a bullet cart.
And actually, to this day, I believe you would be happier on the bullet cart playing the sarangi.
Yeah. Just wearing his coconut.
But he had an acumen for language, Sanskrit, Bengali. So when he would hear Srila Sridhar Maharaj speak or quote verses, he would know the verses, right? And so he was very helpful. And then Srila Sridhar Maharaj engaged him in doing translation work. Prakriti Rasa Satadushan, he was translating it. He was working on it, right? Srila Sridhar Maharaj's Bhagavad Gita, he was working on that. The one that Srila Sridhar Maharaj wanted. He wanted to, you know, Maharaj saw that, and he said it many times, Swami Maharaj is dragging me out, meaning our Srila Prabhupada, is dragging me out through you all. He's dragging me out. He wanted me to go to the West with him, right? I didn't feel the inspiration. He says that in his own words, I didn't feel the inspiration. So what was coming from Srila Sridhar Maharaj at that time, and if you listen to the lectures, the questions that were being asked of him, and then where he would bring it to, that was the point. We were on such a neophyte position. Relatively speaking, most of the questions were generally very basic. Or if there were questions, there was some, depending on the particular person, but generally it was like, Maharaj would just always take it from where you were to where he wanted you to be. Right? And he wasn't stopping anywhere. It was the Vrndavana Express train. We're not cutting a return ticket. You're coming here, you're not going back. So if you're planning to go back, don't come here. Don't waste my time. I don't want to waste your time. This is what our guru-vadis come to give us. So if you're on board with me, and I want you to, you're part of, and his affectionate dealings, I mean, it was like a war zone, meaning people were coming in, they were totally battered in every which way, their faith was disrupted by so many inappropriate dealings. And the bitterness that was there, a lot of people were coming with bitterness, and Maharaj and he stopped that bitterness. He stopped the bitterness. Don't focus on that. Focus on the treasure within you. Focus on that. It's not outside, it's inside. Dive deep into the reality within you. Always he was pointing on these chapters. And he was bringing us, clearing the way, proper siddhanta, jiva-tattva, guru-tattva, dham-tattva, nam-tattva. All the different areas that needed to be clarified, he was clarifying. And all of those, luckily for us, were being recorded. So that's Sridhar's, Goswami Maharaj, that was his drive. And when the first book came out, Krishna Reality the Beautiful.
That was first one.
Huh?
Reality the Beautiful was first?
Yeah. And when he got the book, Sridhar was there, and he was reading it, the different headings, right? And there's a Bengali way of expressing appreciation by making certain noises, and Maharaj is listening to that, and it's like he's relishing something so powerful. So, it's not only that he openly said later, when they asked him about Krishna, he said, I've never read it.
What was it?
He said, I've never read it, the book, Krishna Reality the Beautiful. They were asking him about the book. He said, I never read it. So, how they were using him. He was the divine couple, his Guru Varga, Rupa Goswami. How they were using him to relate this extremely valuable gem message to humankind. What Srila Prabhupada said about his books, that they will be the shiksha for the next 10,000 years, they will be the law books. Well, Srila Sridhar Maharaj's will be the law books on top of the law books. You can't, it's almost like you cannot separate the two of them. They go hand in hand. So Lila, it's part of Mahaprabhu's eternal Lila. And that Srila Sridhar Maharaj's aspect was greatly hindered by certain personalities. But you can't, it's like trying to block out the sun. Yeah. Okay. Let us see it's there, it's going to come in. So it's especially through these books. So the work that you've all done, this is the real work. This is the work.
Okay.
And this work is so valuable because so many of the second generation, the third generation, they're going to relish these books because they don't have what Srila Sridhar Maharaj said, the prejudice.
Yes, can I say?
Yes.
It was amazing. I read the other day, Prakritarasa Satyadushini. I hadn't read it since I wrote a commentary. The only person who ever talked to me about it was this person who returned the book. He said it was the most horrible book he'd ever seen, and it was just, they all should be burned.
Disturbed his bhajan.
Huh?
Disturbed his bhajan.
Yeah. Did he say? Yeah. You remember that? Now, he went home like this, and then somebody said, ah! And they jammed him. And then, he gives it away. But somebody who hasn't been jammed, if you're in the proper line, I don't see how you can disagree with anything in that book, whether it's the verses or the commentary, because that is our line. That is our point of reference to the imitation, the imitators. Buddhana Maharaj, on one of his world journeys, he stuffed a full suit, 100 in a suitcase. And as he went around the world, Buddhana Maharaj was distributing because it is the healthy instruction to protect your budget. It's like the mosquito proof on your windows or something. The roof on your head, keep the water off your head. It's indispensable. But people who haven't been jammed are more likely to hear the message, not only of Srila Maharaj, but of all our previous teachers. And one thing I wanted to add to what you're saying, that non-difference, of course, has difference. And what we find out is that there are two principal Shaktis in Gaura-lila, two principal ones, Gaura-Shakti and Nityananda Shakti, Baladev Shakti, Gaura-Shakti, Baladev Shakti. And without a doubt, you would assume without a doubt, Prabhupada represents the Baladev Shakti, the potency of spreading, Yoga Maya. Two types of Yoga Maya. One Yoga Maya only under Radharani's control, another under Baladev's control. For the mass work of distribution, that energy is required. The Baladev Shakti, Nityananda Shakti. So, in summary, Prabhupada was on that side. He represented and was empowered by Nityananda Baladev Shakti. And Sridhar Maharaj, as is Bhakti Vinod also, they come in the category of what's called Gaura-shakti. It's the missing half. Gaura-nitai. Even Gaura-nitai can't be understood properly for Western devotees unless they have the guidance of Srila Sridhar. Even that, our Gaura-nitai deities of Sankirtan, even that has misunderstanding in the world today. So, it's a problem with the saying, everything is in Prabhupada's books, or even in, there will be the law books for the next 10,000 years. Well, that was spoken 25 or 35, no, 40, over 40 years ago. And they are the law books nowhere in the world, including in ISKCON, at this present moment. They're not the law books anywhere. People are fighting over the law books, changing the law books, all kind of manner of revolution going on in the law books. And if you look out into the world, Modi, he carries, a Gorakhpur Press Gita around the world. And he gives people, a half-baked Hindu Mayavadi commentary. And so we gave Modi another Gita, which is in the Vaishnava. But what I'm saying, nowhere are there the law books. You understand? This law means law. So where? Where are they the law books? They're not the law books at present. So when will they become? They may never become. They're being fought over right now. So those are the kind of spirited, that's a spirited statement. The only person that ever heard Prabhupada say it was Sri Maharaj.
No.
And Kamal? No. You? Who else?
Sorry, 3 times.
Okay, 3 times.
That's,
So you say, so that is to be. That is the ideal. This is what's needed in society. Definitive, non-speculative understanding of reality and society. It's like the Varnashram is what we have to do to teach society. But Varnashram has no spiritual benefit for the people inside the Krishna consciousness movement. We don't follow Varnashram. It is rejected. The first thing is Mahaprabhu rejects Varnashram Dharma as a spiritual engine towards the plane of bhakti. It is simply to organize society to keep them from slipping into animalism. And everyone's slipping mega all over. India's slipping, everybody's slipping into just unbelievable degradation in the world. Unbelievable the things that are going on. For the devotees, there is another substance which we require. And throughout, it is not always that one always gets everything from his guru or her guru. It is not always in that case. There are historical references, and there are just many other references in the field of practice. And people, I think, struggle with that. What are you trying to say? I'm not trying to say anything. We're just saying it's an infinite ocean. In 12 years, Prabhupada gave us the foundation. We have to build on that, and to build on that, Krishna's agents will have to guide us. It's not possible just to take the foundation and just fly off. What is that saying? Et guru-vad, the philosophy of one guru. Nobody, even Prabhupada, didn't have one guru. He states, Sridhar Maharaja is my shiksha guru. That's either true or false. If it's false, what are you saying? Prabhupada is BSing? What? Being duplicit? What are you saying? These are qualities are absent in a pure devotee. No, he's being absolutely truthful with you. He regarded the shiksha of Srila Sridhar Maharaja to be in the category of guru-tattva, not just friendly advice, but actually advice to put your head to. People forget they lived together for 7 years. Shared so many things, even fighting Hindu-Muslim riots together, locked in the same building, people being killed in the streets. So what comes out of that kind of camaraderie? And go look at all the letters of Prabhupada, you'll be shocked. And then you'll get the Rupanuga letter, which will rock your chair, you know? And that's Prabhupada when he's pissed off. He is right now very angry with Sridhar Maharaj, and he writes. But if you analyze from what angle he's angry, he's hurt, not angry. Like recently amongst the devotees in Bombay, there was some confusion with this very kind of big celebrity. And I wrote him, I said, no, I'm sorry that you're angry about this and that. That was wrong, it shouldn't have been done. He wrote back and said, I'm not angry, I'm hurt. The boys were, something happened in the village, you know, felt hurt. So, and people's response sometimes looks like anger, right? Oh, they're upset, you would say, they look angry. But what brought that up is often their feelings have been hurt, or they have witnessed you hurt someone else's feelings. So in this instance, Prabhupada is more hurt than angry. But then that's followed up by other sweet letters, and you have to look at the whole thing. If you're examining, you know, a love story, well, is there love or is there hate? Which is it? And it's a love story amongst God brothers, a spiritual love story of appreciation. And the time they went through after the disappearance of their guru, and Prabhupada had a mustache and went around selling and restocking drugstores and traveled around India. You bump right into it and you sure wouldn't know he was that what was coming in the future. It was just one of the babus in the Gaudiya Math. Babu, you know? One of the babus, you know? In fact, they had some ridiculing names for the babus in the Gaudiya Math. And so he's even getting least likely to succeed. A.C. Bhaktivedanta. Boy, wasn't Bhaktivedanta. Abhay Charan Day. Least likely to succeed. Highest Bengali businessman in Allahabad. That's like, but he has this preaching ability, and it starts getting recognized even in time of Bhaktisiddhanta. His poems, his speeches, Look at the pictures of him and Radha Damodar. He's got the governor sitting there. All these people are looking at Prabhupada. Prabhupada is sitting up, straight as an arrow, and just preaching, and everybody's like looking at him, sitting by Rupa Goswami Samadhi, and that whole thing. He starts speaking, everybody just starts looking at him. So people recognize this early on. And Saranga Goswami, whom we never met, but Prabhupada wrote 25 articles, 25 articles for his Bengali magazine. And signing them all Abhay Charan Day. It's like Jim Jones. It's like, duh. That's a common name, Abhay Charan Day. He didn't even say Abhay Charan Aravinda. That's the point I wanted to make, because he didn't live in the mud. He lived outside the mud. And so you were still in that world. And you went by your OBL Kapoor. You Sanyal, Nishikant Sanyal. You sometimes added your initiation name there. Acharya Prabhakar, Prabhupada's first Acharya. His initiated name is Acharya, but they always, because they're in the world. So he signs his Vyasa Puja offering with his no karmic name, his karmic name. Right? Now, what if today a disciple wrote a Vyasa Puja for his guru and signed it Robert Smith, but he's actually already initiated? The guru would probably say, why you sign Robert Smith? You should sign your initiated name, your name. But that wasn't in vogue in Gaudiya Math. If you lived outside, you mainly lived your secular name. So he wrote his Vyasa Puja offering. So Saranga, by the time the 40s rolled around, by the time 1942, he thought, we can't have this anymore, we have to have a title for this preacher, He needs a title, because everybody in those days had names that you couldn't fit on a single line of a business card, you just had big titles, Bhakti Shastri, Kings, this, that, all this stuff. Kings had names that long. And Prabhupada's Abhay Charan Day, and that's when he became Bhakti Siddhanta Das. And we have Prabhupada's signature on the League of Devotees papers. It's on the backside. Or no, it's on where he scratches something out, and then he has to initial it, and he says alias Bhakti Siddhanta Das Adhikar. Alias Abhay Charan Aravinda Bhakti Siddhanta Das Adhikar. Next year's name changed to Bhakti Vedanta. First name change by Saranga. Next year, name change again. And his name, Bhakti Vedanta. So the disciples of Bhakti Siddhanta felt, Bhakti Siddhanta is our guru, Abhay Babu is a good preacher, all that, but our guru, so they changed his name to Bhakti Vedanta. That was Sridhar Maharaj who gave him the name Bhakti Vedanta. And that wasn't, it shouldn't be told, just Sridhar Maharaj. No, that's not what was happening here. Bhakti Siddhanta was recognizing Prabhupada through Saranga Maharaj. And he's giving this title, it's not quite the appropriate. So they back up a little bit, analyze, and re-give him the name. And it's understood that he's being, this is coming from Bhakti Siddhanta, it's flowing through Saranga Maharaj. Then adjustment given by Sridhar Maharaj, then it sticks. He becomes Bhakti Vedanta Prabhu in 1943. That is such a meaningful event that Keshava Maharaj henceforward decides, even before Prabhupada taking sannyas, to name all his sannyasi disciples Bhakti Vedantas. Keshava Maharaj takes this decision. Raya Maharaj takes sannyas actually before Prabhupada. He's a junior, and he's a Bhakti Vedanta. And when Prabhupada took sannyas, that's Muni Maharaj. He became Muni Maharaj, Bhakti Vedanta. But there were other Bhakti Vedantas, Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Maharaj and others. They were before Prabhupada became a sannyasi, but he became the first Bhakti Vedanta in the Gaudiya Math. And the way the whole thing was understood, who's there? Who's there? Yajabara, Sridhar Maharaj, Madhav Maharaj, Saranga Goswami. We all belong on the floor somewhere just rubbing foot dust on our heads. This is our Guru Varga in a meeting, and they decide the name of Prabhupada. This is not an ordinary thing. Like, okay, let's pick a name. I think this, I think that. Okay, that'll work. Let's vote on it. You can never be sure of the absolute truth by vote. Absolute truth expresses through parampara and ishtagosi amongst devotees. Voting is out. I recommend that as first rule of ISKCON to change. No more votes on anything. And now we'll agree on anything. Agreed. That's how you agree, not by, you lost. Sorry, we outvoted you by 2 votes. You eat it, we do it our way. That's been the history. That doesn't work in Vaishnava circles. And you know what? The absolute truth doesn't descend in that kind of an environment. It's an autocratic environment that God lives in, and He only comes to such places. So, that's the society blanket and protecting is a vast nothing. Again, I lost myself. So,
Can I ask a question?
questions always welcome. Otherwise, we just babble on into it.
I think that it's really easy to say, like back in the day when we had wonderful people like Srila Swami and Srila Prabhupada, and they could easily make, correct decision by themselves. But now we don't maybe have such elevated people that have the wherewithal to make one decision for the whole movement by themselves. So that seems like
Yes, because it was never supposed to be like that in the beginning. The one whole movement was never supposed to be one big bowl. It is to be, first off, temple presidents for life. No, wasn't it called centralization? That's it. 2 times Prabhupada fired the GBC means, you're out. There is no GBC. 2 times. Yeah, there's supposed to be, what do you call it? Autonomy. There's supposed to be autonomy. Brahmins are autonomous. Prabhupada's institution is trained Brahmins. Brahmins aren't institutional beings. You don't speak the truth, I walk. I'm a Brahmin. Simple as that. Chanaka Gupta, I don't care who you are. It's my way or the highway. It's the truth or we go. Oh, the institution, we stay. That's not a Brahmin. The institution is secondary. And it was set up different in those days. There was autonomy. But there was spiritual cohesiveness. That wasn't autonomous. That was the same. Everywhere you went, you heard the same thing. You went to France, you knew French, you heard the same philosophy. You went to LA, you heard the same. Everything was the same. People would go, wow, all you people have the same philosophy. And I was like, yeah, that's the point. We follow philosophy. But this autonomy and individuality was there. So it wasn't exactly like, okay, do you know there's a Brazilian? No, a Brazilian in charge of Switzerland? A Brazilian in charge of Switzerland? You obviously know nothing about Swiss people. You don't put a Brazilian in charge of Swiss people. Brazilians are very passionate. It's another, the joke is in heaven, the Swiss are the lovers. But then there's another thing. What you just said fits the society you're in. What you just said doesn't fit the rest of Gaudiya Vaishnavism bona fide, because we're not confused. And there are individuals who can take a decision for their disciples in that community. Some of the communities are as small as 50 people. So someone can take the right decision, solve problems, do what is necessary. And now, to think, and I hope I don't sound like I'm coming off too much puffed up, but to think that you'll follow this, or you're prescribing to follow, dedicate your life to this, and that you'll have none of the fruits after a lifetime. Then why are you bothering to do this? Why are you wasting your time? You join Krishna consciousness for what? You want love of God. You want to become pure. You want to become like those great acharyas in the sense, not popular, not famous, maybe, but their purity. We want that. It's a natural state of the soul. We want that. So what do we say to people? We have a process, and these are our gurus, and they have all followed it, but none of them have any realization. They're not self-realized. They're not pure by now. Then why would you? It's like going to university and you go, it's right there on the board. Nobody ever gets a job who graduates from this school. Nobody gets Social Security benefits. You don't get nothing. But this great person establishes school, and all his teachings are available, but nobody who's followed them got any of the fruits. That might be acceptable in ISKCON, but it's not acceptable in the Gaudiya Sampradaya around the world. I know devotees in Hungary, they're at the tune of 1,000. I know people who have never read Prabhupada's books or any part of it. Never. I know hundreds of devotees who have never read Prabhupada's books. And they speak English because their guru is Srila Prabhupada Maharaj, or their guru is Sridhar Maharaj. Their guru is somebody else in a bona fide line. They have the right understanding. They have realization also. It's no credit to our guru to say, yes, I did this for 50 years, but I'm a Kanishta, I don't have any realization, I don't know anything, this and that. It's no credit. It's no credit. It's no credit to be a big boaster either. But you have to, the Manasamhita says, don't be a coward. You have to take the seat. In those days, the seat of your guru after your guru. Manasamhita. The disciple shall take the seat of the guru and continue to work. That's the way it was way back. Now things have changed. Gaudiya Math tried to make Bhakti Siddhanta Ritvik for Gaudiya Math. They tried many things, but the only one that works is when disciples follow the spiritual master and live up to the standard of the teachings of Mahaprabhu. Then for the next generation, they are seen as the guardians. But if we stop this, there's no solution. There's no solution. You can't have an appointed, voted board of acharyas, and we vote this person as the pure devotee, and we vote this and we vote that. Now, that doesn't bring down anything. It may just expand confusion. So if a person says, I have no realization, well, if that's from their deep humility, well, let's see what else they have to say. But that may be too. That may be true. One time a godbrother told me, I believe chanting 16 rounds and following the 4 regular principles, you go back to Godhead. I said, I don't believe that. That's it? That's all that's required? I know so many people finish their 16 rounds, then they blooped. They finished their rounds for the day, and then they left the temple and went into Maya. They called it bloop. Right? In those days, they called it bloop. I don't know what they call it now. Many things are required. Giving up material desires, clearing the heart of all the annoyances, learning self-sacrifice and surrender. Many things are required as we chant our rounds and follow regular principles. There are ladies in Gujarat who have never broken the principles, and they never drank water on Ekadasi either. But they're not self-realized. And there are Sahajis that chant 64 rounds a day and follow the 4 regular principles. Not every Sahajya is a party animal. They have Paramahansa Sahajiyas. They are stricter than anybody you've ever seen practicing in your capacity. So it's not automatic just because you chant 16 rounds a day or even 64 rounds a day that it's automatic. Chanting must be offensive in the holy name. One should avoid offenses. There's proper conception. If you're in the Bombay crowd and you're a Jew and you're chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare in front of Radharasa Bihari, and when it's the Maha Mantra, it comes to Hare Rama, you run over in front of Lord Ramachandra and do a little Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So what's Rama in your conception? Well, you know what? Those boys don't have any conception, except for they're putting on a show for everybody to watch. There is no conception. They're just complete plane of Hinduism. No Gaudiya conception traceable practically in the ISKCON brahmacharis at all. Flat out. It just doesn't match. And leaders will say, ISKCON Sampradaya hey. We are ISKCON Sampradaya. And I say, I don't know if you really want to do that. You might want to just remain part of the Sampradaya which you're supposed to be part of. Because if you separate, then you go your own way. In the back of the Oops book, on the back cover, it says that the realization that I'm paraphrasing, that we fell from the spiritual world. This is unique realization of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, setting him apart and above all other acharyas. It is the biggest blunder misconception. It's a square one fell on your nose misconception. And they're saying that that is the contribution of Prabhupada that makes his branch a separate sampradaya. This is printed on a book called Our Original Position. Now, what does all that mean? So, it means that there's a lot of work ahead to save ISKCON. And that's the work of ISKCON, leaders, to save the situation, make things right, best they can. But outside, I'm saying people don't face the same perils. They don't face the same perils as people inside ISKCON face today. In one sense, small is beautiful. And like I say all the time, if my group goes astray, it's very easy to put them back on track. I only have to send a WhatsApp message to about 3 people. It's corrected. Because you're only talking about 50 people. If it's 20,000, we can't even get them all to know what days at Codicy, what to speak of, guiding. And that's another problem. Who said everybody should be making these thousands and thousands of disciples? The quote is Prabhupada said, right? What about the other Prabhupada quotes? 1972, now's the time to boil the milk. We have enough disciples. 1972. It's after that that the Bhakti program started. That was the mass influx from 74 and 5 and 6. And so the milk was never boiled. The opposite happened. More people were brought in and more centers were opened. So what you say is both true, and I don't understand it clearly because I'm not in that group for over 25, 30 years. But I can tell you that the same kind of troubles are shared by everybody. Financial, land issues, governments attacking, all kind of stuff. But ISKCON alone struggles. In the bona fide circles, ISKCON alone struggles with these Siddhantic understandings of all the basic tattvas. Other people don't have that misunderstanding. So their way forward has to be adjusted to their present situation, which is very different from outside. In our library, you walk in our library, there's 2 Maharaj. All the books of Prabhupada, Sridhar Maharaj, Srila Maharaj are there. Nothing else. Nothing else for the devotees to read. When you've read all 30 volumes, all 17 volumes, all extra books, Sridhar Maharaj, Srila Maharaj, and you can reproduce that and understand that up to that level, maybe we'll have a look at Jaiva Dharma or some other books of Bhakti Siddhanta. We are more strict in this country. But the thing is, that what we say, this is your volume, wow, that's a lot. It's from 3 separate Paramahansas. One Kanishta Paramahansa. That was a nice story. So it's and nobody's like, I'm looking for something. They got it. They have something, and we all have something. And we're working with it. The problem is, ISKCON's allowed too many upasiddhanta things, upasiddhantic, upasampradaya things to infiltrate even the practice of bhakti yoga.
So how does one, when they're in the 2nd generation or 3rd generation, how is it that they come to the proper conceptions? Meaning, if they're born within the institution, or they're associating with those within the institution, what directs them to the proper conception? What would do that?
Well, 2 things. If they're in something's wrong, then the super soul directs them. If something's to be corrected on the plane of where it's now actively incorrected, the leaders have to adjust. Instead of all the kids going for Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav and everything, the leaders should go and study the philosophy of the Gaudiya Sampradaya and what it is, adjust it. That's what Prabhupada said. Let's take a look at what he said. He didn't just say one thing about the Jiva soul. He did say some confusing things, but in the books, he says the conclusion is no one falls from Vaikuntha. And if you don't fall from Vaikuntha, you sure the heck didn't fall from Goloka. So that's the conclusion. But Jayadvaita told me, Jayadvaita Swami personally told me, when Prabhupada says conclusion, he doesn't mean conclusion. Good luck. Now, what he might have been saying was, we added that there. Who knows? Like, Prabhupada didn't say indeed. I don't think he ever said that word. I-N-D-E-E-D. Indeed. But it's all through the purports. Indeed. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was exhibiting, indeed. That's just editing. But that was in the originals. But he never said indeed. If you want the gem of what is Prabhupada speak, read first 3 volumes, first canto, printed here in Delhi. It's just beauty beyond beauty. Misspelled words, inaccurate sentence structures, and the bhakti is just, it's just, and then the others, I've always called it L.A. Bankers English. L.A. Bankers English. Indeed, Sri Chaitanya, all these little embellishments. They should unchange those books, they should get rid of all those books, and they should forbid any such shenanigans in the future, ever changing anything at this point, even if there's a mistake, and there were a few mistakes. Just leave it there. Mistakes and all. Because what's going on is crazy. So, first thing, like I said, I wasn't joking, no votes. No voting. Voting is a demoniac, demon. Those are Prabhupada. They're caught between a hard spot and a rock. He did and he didn't. He did and he didn't. So, take a look at the broader field, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. Not just Guru. Guru said, well, what Shastra said, what the other Sadhu said, what the Parampara said, previous Acharya. Okay, then maybe some understanding has to be applied occasionally to some things that Prabhupada said. But when you take the whole thing in whole, it's pretty easy to see a balance. He's stopping the trend towards Mayavad. Because the Brahma Jyoti, Krishna says, I am the source of the Brahma Jyoti, the origin of living entities. It's even right there in the Bhagavad Gita. Living entity, the Brahma Jyoti is part of the Tatastha. Not to say that all the Tatastha is marked there, but it's part of it. So we know that is Mayavad, Brahma Jyoti, it is about the effulgence of Krishna. And as lights go, it's probably the best light you ever saw. The one that emanates from Krishna. The devotees have almost said, yes, Brahma Jyoti. It's just like, dude. It's the bodily effulgence of Krishna. It permeates the whole spiritual sky, Goloka included. I once read an appreciation of Bhakti Siddhanta, the Brahma Jyoti. Wow. That's not just any impersonal light. That's Krishna's bodily effulgence. So what is the effulgence of Radharani? Next time you see a picture of Radha and Krishna, ask one of the sannyasis or somebody who's been around. There'll be a halo like a Surya behind Krishna. So always people will say, who's that? That's Krishna. Who's the girl, in the West? His girlfriend. Sometimes that's Krishna's girlfriend. God has a girlfriend. Yes, God has a girlfriend. So,
behind the effulgence of Gaura-lila.
oh yeah. So always, everyone says, that's the spiritual effulgence of Krishna. That's the Brahma Jyoti. You say something about it. Oh. And no one ever says, what's that behind the girlfriend? What is that? So, if somebody asked you, okay, that's the Brahma Jyoti emanating from Krishna. It's not a halo, it's not an angel in heaven, it's Vaishnava. What is that? Well, the person will say that's the effulgence of Radharani. And it usually stops there. That's cool. Krishna's effulgence has got Vedic descriptions. And so does Radharani's. And they're not the same. Although some living entities generate from Radharani. So that would be from her effulgence. But her effulgence is not called the Brahmajyoti. It's called Saranagati. Surrender. Shraddha. The halo of Srimati Radharani is Shraddha. The energy of faith is her energy. And her investment in the living entity enables us to serve Krishna. So the halo around Radharani is Shraddha. And Shraddha leads us to Saranagati. Without faith, proper faith, there is no surrender. And without real surrender, there is no real bhakti. It's just a shell of bhakti. No fruits of bhakti. So, at some point in everyone's devotional service, the more refined and correct understanding is required. Not that it's to be talked about all the time and this and that and there, but every person, in order to do bhajan, has to have it lined up. It's like lining up your airs. If you're going to do kundalini yoga, you have to line up your airs with pranayama. You just can't dive into kundalini. So you can't just proceed in bhakti with all kinds of misunderstandings. It's not possible. A little bit in the beginning. 3 modes of material nature, 5, 4, you got it wrong, doesn't really matter. Other things really matter. What are you chanting? Rama. Is it Krishna or is it Rama? If it's Rama, it's even not up to the Dwarka standard, actually, of Bhav, and all these things are very less than Ayodhya, very low, increasing in Dwarka, but no match for Vrndavana. And who are we? What is our line? Who are we? We should understand Vrndavana and not just, oh, this one pond where this happened, this one pond where that happened. Ponds are all over this place. There are ponds everywhere. This isn't about just pond dipping place after place. Understanding is everything in bhajan. If we don't have proper understanding, then bhajan doesn't go forward. Every once in a while, with no understanding, bhajan progresses just due to name alone. But these things exist for a purpose, and they're to help us. And correct understanding is necessary. If there are it's in the Prakriti Rasa book. Bhaktivinoda lists all the different categories of aparad, 10 offenses, and anarthas. And anarthas grow due to offenses. So we may already have anarthas, and if we make offenses, the chanting of Hare Krishna waters the weeds, not the creepers. So if aparad is there, then the garden will just be overrun by the unnecessary. The creeper will be stifled out. And the first reaction to nam-aparad is misunderstanding the philosophy. It's the first reaction, not leprosy. Bhaktivinoda says, tattva Brahma. Misunderstanding of the tattvas is the first one to manifest. If we had that book, they're all listed there in one of the purports by Bhaktivinoda. A misunderstanding. Again, this traces back. The whole story of confusion and problem today. One's connected to here, that's why, but where did that come? It goes here, it goes here, it goes here, it goes here. It goes all the way back. It goes back to Vaishnava aparad is where it goes to. And things are catastrophic after that. Catastrophic. Then one thing leads to another, to another, to another, and the results are still going on in the society. Misunderstanding brought about by aparad, various types of more interest in archana and homa than the actual bhajan. We're not so much for this archana business, this big homa. We do it in South India just as a show. Huge homas, big logs in the hole and everything. Chant Hare Krishna, your life will be sublime. That is Mahaprabhu's message, Prabhupada's message. And we do these things for preaching. But the devotees don't just think that, we're doing the monthly homa fire yoga, therefore it's the crescendo. No, for the public, it's the crescendo in South India. You have no faith in the holy name at all. Nobody does bhajan in South India. They do pujas, archana, homas. But we shouldn't think that this, even this, these, I don't know how to do them so fast, all these mudras. The first sign of Raganuga Bhakti is no more mudras, because these disturb Krishna. You're coming in front of him and doing all these wiggly things. He's like, what's going on? I call it the Prabhupada Nama Om standard. Give me 3 drops of water, make the offering. It's not like all this hocus pocus and dropping and doing all this stuff. You can do tilak, it takes 20 minutes to put on tilak. Chanting mantra, all this stuff. That's there. And plus, you should do 99 pranayams before you say Gayatri. That's this one you real fast. You gotta take, and you exhale for 1 minute. For a minute. You do that 99 times. Then you say this. That's all there in our books. For what? Putting this in the face of the smartest. You guys got rules? Look at our rules. That's all those rules are for. Just to push the smartest out of the picture. You guys think you got class? Check this out. 99 pranayams, all this stuff. It's like, And once a Sri Vaishnava looked into one of our books that has that, it's a reference book. They were shocked. Those 2 brothers, Sri Vaishnavas, they were shocked about the whole thing, concept of Gayatri, how many pranayamas. And they looked at me and they go, "You're doing?" Never done. But I said, "Yeah, you're doing?" Never did. That's what it's for. All those rules, not for us. All those rules, so that the fools who cannot recognize what is simple, pure love of God. So therefore, we put a silver coat, diamond coat, gold coat, wool coat, big temple coat, big noise coat, turn up the volume. But really, it's the simplest thing that ever existed. Once all the pretense has gone away, we're only trying to develop love of God. That's it. If you didn't join for that reason, go back and think why you're joining. Prabhupada did say, you need a wife. We have many beautiful young girls. I will give you a wife. You can get everything. But it'd be rather foolish to think, well, yeah, I came to the Hare Krishna movement just to get married. Right? Didn't you all come? You know who's the hardest people to join the Hare Krishna movement? The hardest people to convince to join the Hare Krishna movement? You know what I'm going to say? Can you guess? It's not the Muslims. It's the people who are born in Hare Krishna movement. I say to them all the time, not you, because I don't know you, I say, so, have you decided if you're going to join yet? How old are you, 22? Have you decided yet? Because in the beginning, it's all mommy and daddy said, I didn't have a choice of pictures to look at. It's all Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. It's all Prasad, Prasad, and all this. But then in the end, in adulthood, sometimes these kids realize that, yeah, now it's up to me, and they float away. Because they never joined. Just being here isn't enough. No reflection on you, because I don't know who you are. But I'm speaking of his daughter, primarily his daughter, who's a wonderful person. But she's been struggling since getting out of her teens and her early adult years with, are you going to join? Is this it? Are you convinced? What is it? And she's actually realizing that as an adult, surrender, japa, none of this stuff is the business of children. We're just showing them and leading them in a pious life and pointing in the direction. You cannot force a son or a daughter or anybody. You can only up to a point. It's an adult decision, whether you're a devotee or not. And a lot of people are just happy if their kids aren't doing drugs, or just turned out balanced and they're going to have kids, grandkids. It's like, So, but in bhajan, certain requirements are there. The stage of Anartha Nivritti has to be strived for. Bhajan doesn't go beyond Anartha Nivritti unless Anartha Nivritti is achieved. In other words, it doesn't go You don't go to Bhava Bhakti, but you all got a whole bunch of knots in your heart, a whole bunch of unfulfilled whatevers or attitudes or misunderstandings. That story in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, one day Radharani calls Gopakumar. Gopakumar's already gone back to Godhead. She calls Gopakumar, who's a cowherd boy, and she says, there is a Brahmin in Braj. I think she says he's attained Bhava Bhakti. He lacks spontaneity in the holy name. He has not reached spontaneous love. He's got regulated Bhava Bhakti, say so. He's missing this element. This only comes through direct personal association. And it doesn't say it, but he's older. His gurus left the world long ago. From the spiritual world, Radharani, this is the book, Brihad Bhagavatamrita. She sends Gopakumar to enlighten this Brahmin by telling him Gopakumar's own experience. And that's the story, how it unfolds. And at the end of the story, the Brahmin has now reached the level of spontaneous love of God. And just like at the end of Brahma Kumar's story, he looks and sees Krishna and the cows coming out of the forest in the evening. So similarly, that Brahmin, and Gopakumar again looks, so that Brahmin has been transported all the way to Goloka during this conversation, Gopakumar. But what he lacked is spontaneity, a type of attraction that can't be given from practice, it can't be gotten from books, it has to be gotten from the person, that highest level of sadhu sangha. So many levels of sadhu sangha come to us, and if it is indeed sadhu sangha, each time it is a representation of Krishna. The Guru is one, but he appears in many forms over time. And Prabhupada doesn't look anything like he does here in the spiritual world. But some of my godbrothers think he does. And then I say he must be Vatsalya Ras, then, because he's an old man. And that means he must be a Vatsalya. Did you ever read the last thing Prabhupada wrote in terms of books? In the unedited edition of the Bhagavatam, which I just bought one the other day, the last book is only this thick, 10th canto. It's the last, and the last verse, the last two verses, he's describing Lord Brahma and seeing Krishna and the cows. Brahma smearing his eyes with tears. And that description that Prabhupada gives is his last words to us in this world. That should be not just looked at, preserved in a book. It should be put on an altar somewhere. That's Prabhupada's last words before he enters, in many people's opinion, the very scene that she was describing, where Krishna and the cow is coming through the forest. And Prabhupada leaves this world. Of course, time, which is just an energy in this world, it was a couple weeks between when this happened and then. Like when Sridhar Maharaj sang the song Sri Rupa Manjari, that's at the disappearance, but that drama took place over 2 weeks. Many people recall many things happening. That happened, I believe he says 2 days or 3 days prior to the departure of Bhakti Siddhanta is when he sent it. First, somebody should have
Or Jackie.
Yeah, so what?
He was called.
Well, first, yeah, and then Sridhar Maharaj was asked to sing, but he didn't sing. And then Jajbar, somebody again started to sing, and that's when Bhakti Siddhanta said, "No, I want to hear Sridhar Maharaj sing." So that's mentioned in this book, in what is it? In Prapanam Jivana, no, where is it? Prapanam Jivana, the prayers of Rupa Goswami in the end. And Sridhar Maharaj writes about that. Let me find it. Where is it? Sridhar Maharaj writes about that right here. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada handed Srila Sridhar Maharaj over to the holy lotus feet of Sri Rupa Goswami by having him sing the prayer Sri Rupa Manjari Pada. The ontological position of Srila Sridhar Maharaj became that of the storehouse keeper of life's greatest gift, that of the position of the servant, in the camp of Rupa Manjari, Sri Rupa Varga, Rupanuga Varga. His intense desire for the dust of the lotus feet of Sri Rupa Goswami is beautifully expressed in his prayer, Sri Rupa Pada Raja Vartana Dasaka. So this is in reference to Sri Ramar singing the Sri Rupa Manjari Pada song for Bhakti Siddhanta leading up to his disappearance. And it was taken by everyone present. And it's mentioned by Sridhar Maharaj also. It's confirmed by everybody who was there. And everybody accepted that Sridhar Maharaj was given the chair of the to guard, in his words, guard the gate of the Rupanuga Sampradaya. And he said, passport you got. The visa I'm not issuing to everyone. In other words, Mahaprabhu's going to join Hare Krishna, everybody gets the passport. Right from my own hand, you saw it. Oh, produce it. Right there, you saw it, right? Want me to do it again? Want to see it again? So, anyway, back to everyone took it that he's been given this position, highest internal position, passed to Sri Maharaj. He didn't write about that. His godbrothers spoke about that. And they were in mass number. And even Tirtha Maharaj and other people who stood for the properties did not stand against this idea that Sridhar Maharaj was given this position, an internal position, very high position. And that was the opinion of many exalted devotees, not his own. Their opinion was he's given the point of acharya, the representative, the chair. But in his own opinion, he was given the job of a gatekeeper. And never spoke of himself about being a higher plane. But what's inside? I'll tell you one thing. Sudhir told me, I probably shouldn't say these things because it sounds totally sahajya. But one day, Sudhir told me, on the veranda, Sridhar Maharaj turned to Sudhir and said, I'm standing in the courtyard of Rupa Manjari, and I'm trying to relate to you my experience. And then he just walked into his room and shut the door. Now, probably people were looking around for multi plants and peacocks, and then, in a kunja. I was up here. And the last time I had darshan of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he was asking if it was day or night, and he was also asking, was he lying down or sitting? He had those last few weeks, lying down, sitting, day, night. He wasn't opening his eyes. He was almost completely blind in the end. But he had no idea whether he was laying down or sitting up. And it just so happens he was laying facing the wall. And rather than inconveniencing him to have him turn over, we were all standing above him, putting our hand over him, listening, and for him to hear Govinda Maharaj at point blank range, as loud as a man can yell, shouting into his ear for about 5 minutes before he came back from wherever he was having the experience to the conscious world with the rest of us. And we saw this in Prabhupada too, and I'm sure some devotees can relate their experience of Prabhupada leaving this world and then again manifesting in the external world. So Sridhar Maharaj's tea was like that. And they were trying to relate to him my name, which Govinda Maharaj had chosen. And so they're shouting that name over and over again. And he would then repeat, he would say, Bhakti, ha. And you go, ha. Bhakti, ha. Narasingha. And then they would shout, Bhakti Gaura-lila, Narasingha. And he would go, Bhakti, ha. Narasingha. So then Govinda Maharaj goes, Puja Ragapata Gaura-Vabangi, Gaura-Vabangi. And then he goes, Bhakti Gaura-Narasingha. And then I became Narasingha Maharaj. So, but his state was like not like you experience. And the next morning we were leaving, Sridhar and I, in a vehicle. And this is the last time he was there also. And I tap him on the arm, we're getting in the taxi, and I look up. Sridhar Maharaj's feet were up on some pillows, and they were perfectly framed in the window. His 2 feet were just like that. We were getting in a car, I go, hey, look, darshan. And then Sridhar said, I think we will not see you. Sridhar Maharaj said, yeah. But I don't think we should speak like this when we go back. We were going to different places. And so we didn't. He didn't know. There wasn't any like trying to say what would be the future. But I think it was about 6 to 7, 8, maybe even 8 weeks later. And Srila Prabhupada happened to be there. His car broke down on the bridge. Srila Prabhupada was on his way to Calcutta or wherever they were going, and his car broke down. And so he's in the car, and then, Chaitanya Saraswati's mutt's just over there, a couple hundred meters from the bridge. So he says, I'm going to go spend time with Sridhar Maharaj, you fix the car. And he stayed 3 days. And Sridhar Maharaj asked him to stay until he left the war. Had him stay there. So he stayed for 3 days until he departed. So, it really, when people try to, turn an obvious disaster by and the untimely death of a Vaishnava and try to twist that by some means into Lila. This is a big, big mistake. Big, big mistake. The untimely death of a Vaishnava is just that. Untimely, accidental, tragedy, not Lila. Not Lila. But there are Lilas of the disappearance of great Vaishnavas, and the time of their withdrawing from the world is of no minor importance. Prabhupada manifests an intense desire to go to Govardhan Hill before his disappearance. Rampuja was coming up, of course, but he wanted to go in a bullock cart. He wanted Lokanath Swami to bring the bullock cart. Or we'll do Govardhan Park. This was deep inside, and it was thought if he goes, he'll never survive the bullock cart ride. So it didn't happen. But the thing to note wasn't like, he wanted to go to Govardhan, but that wasn't practical, so we didn't do that. It's like, what is the meaning of that? He's within days of leaving this world. And that bhav, that desire, it isn't because, I never got to see Govardhan in the last 20 years, like somebody lamenting like, well, I've kind of gone everywhere, but it didn't go to Raul, so if we could go to Raul, that'd be cool. You get that stuff today from all kind of people. Sightseeing. He wasn't like, I need to go on a sightseeing tour. That was his internal bhav. And the chapter he's working on is when Brahma had hid the boys in the cow in the caves, and all this is the cowherd boys and Govardhan. That's what he's translating leading up to his departure. He's practically sitting up in his bed with that desire. We should note that. Similarly, Kartik was not important in the Hare Krishna movement in the time of Prabhupada. Kartik, nobody came to Kartik. Yeah, you come to Kartik. This is a Christmas marathon. Kartik? Nobody came to Kartik. Nobody worshipped Govardhan even, hardly. A couple of people only. You would have a mound of rice in New York, wherever you were, that was going on Puja Day, but nobody came to Kartik. Only after. So we say that Prabhupada chose his disappearance in the month of Kartik, thus the best till last, bringing us all to Kartik in the last gesture of his Leela, but not in the beginning of it. No one came to Kartik. You just, wherever you were, you were. 2 times, there are only 2 places where all the devotees would come at one time. Gaur Purnima festival is supposed to be a 2-month festival. 1 month in Mayapur, 1 month in Vrndavana. And Prabhupada writes, why? Because while preaching, you become contaminated. It's right there in his books. The preachers, while going out to fight Maya, actually become contaminated by that preaching. And he says, so they should return to Mayapur and Vrindavan, bathing in Ganga and Jamuna, doing kirtan and studying. And he gives a little short thing, 2-month festival every year. Now, who knows? I haven't seen a 2-month festival since I don't know when. So what, but Kartik wasn't in the Janmashtami? Yes. Gaur Purnimas? Yes. Well, that was it. Everything else was secondary, almost no focus. Baladev Purnima, Nityananda Charyadasi, Nishringa Chaturdasi, nothing. Just Gaur Purnima, Janmashtami. Had Prabhupada disappeared in another time, I don't know if we'd all be coming to Kartik. There wouldn't have been a precedence for it. It would have just been another thing the Gaudiya Math does. Kartik saved it. So we say he chose that time of his disappearance. He showed that intensity and his desire to go to Govardhana. And once Krishnadas Babaji came, Prabhupada was making sound. Must be recorded in somebody's memoirs by now. And he was making sounds, and it worried the devotees. He's making sounds. When Babaji came and sat with Prabhupada, he said, no, it's all right. He's entering Krishna Lila. This is ordinary, common. He'll be making such sounds. So, just going in a second isn't the way all great Vaishnavas lead. There's a period of their manifest departure, Lila. And it can be very instructive to us. And usually, there's some instruction on the external plane, but really what's of value is the internal. What can be gathered there internally is more instructive. So people may think that what's lacking, book distribution dropped off. Yeah, it did. We used to do 1 million back to Godheads a month. 1 million. Mine were passed out to Africans. Nonetheless, worldwide 1 million. Then it dropped down to 3,000 maximum. So those things are important. However, don't think that the movement suffers because we didn't pass out enough books. Millions of people got these books. Who reads them? I wonder what stories people read anymore when they read Prabhupada's books. What do they read? Just the Prasadam pastimes, Hari Bol pastime? I used to think, well, householders don't read these books, that's for sure. Prabhupada puts down a lot of, things about family attachment and all these things. I never speak on those things. I figure everybody must have figured it out by now. Everybody's adjusting and do the best you can wherever we are. But he put a lot on that. And I figure because he was very attached to his family. He liked his wife and his children very much, and it was very painful for him to leave. He just walked out the door. He had a spat with his wife, and he walked out the door, and he never came back. You can't tell me that he wasn't pained, that he had no love for his children. He's like, yeah, children are everywhere. Prabhupada is a person with much love. And he could share that. And look at him, pictures of him playing with little children when he first came to America and stuff like that. He wasn't a block of ice. Love all love Krishna means love all. He has love of Krishna, and he can show love even to a small child, to a family, to somebody. Pishima's famous. Prabhupada's sister. But we're not concerned about anything else about Pishima. Pishima also printed Sridhar Maharaja's first book. She got the money from her husband, who we heard wasn't even a vegetarian. Prabhupada's sister's husband wasn't even a strict vegetarian. She was initiated by Bhakti Siddhanta Harinam, second initiation by Saranga Goswami, and when Prabhupada and Sridhar Maharaj lived together, Prabhupada in the Griha, Sridhar Maharaj in the ashram, connected buildings, he compiled Prapanam Jivanamrita. And in 1943, I believe that's the first printing. And Pishima got the money from her husband, and he paid for the printing. Now, I used to have Prabhupada's personal copy of Sridhar Maharaj's book, Prabhupada. And in it, Prabhupada, there are 11 signatures of Prabhupada in one book, including Abhaicharan Day, number 6, Sitakanta Banerjee. Then when he became Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Siddhanta doesn't appear in it. But when he became Bhakti Vedanta, it's A.C. Bhakti Vedanta. And he writes the A like this. Understand? Now Prabhupada writes the A. So, you know what I'm saying? Like a fat A, A-C. Understand? And it's going off like that. In the beginning, he didn't write like that. He made an A like this. Right? But lots of zip, 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 zip. You know, he was really going like this, right? And that signature's in there twice. Then his signature changes. It's a whole anthology of Prabhupada's signature. And Srila Maharaj has one book, Prabhupada Jivanamrita. I gave that to a godbrother. I banged my head because if I could go back in time, I'd give him something else. I gave it to Triple I Maharaj. Good. Anyway, well, who knows? Well, everybody in Gaudiya Math, everybody in Srila Maharaj's ashram knows that, more or less. Everybody knows because Pishima was just more than Prabhupada's sister. She was also a disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta. She also had second initiation from Saranga Goswami. She's connected in to that Vaishnava world, which is what we like to think of as the better end of the Gaudiya Math, which continues. So in that, you know, I saw her once in Prabhupada's foyer, just out where the secretary would be. And I came out at a moment where Krishnadas Babaji was just about ready to come in the room. When I came out as a sannyasi, she stood up, gave pranams, and then she had a bottle of Ganges water in her hand and wanted to give me some tirtham. In South India, you're supposed to fold this finger. You do this. Here in Vrndavana, they go like this, right? But in South India, you have to go like this. They'll hit you with a spoon. Put your finger like this, that's my habit. So she gives me Ganges, and she's saying Ganga Jal, Ganga Jal. So she gives me some Ganga Jal, right? And then she turns around and sprinkles the water where she was sitting. So much for call me Prabhu. Her humility was, wherever I sit, I should purify that place. And so she carried Ganges water. And when she was getting ready to leave, she sprinkled it on the seat. Now I offer my obeisances, return to such Vaishnavis. But the ones that are saying, call me Prabhu, it's like, what they have to offer? Nothing. Why do you want to be called Lord? Call me Master. Very wrong way. Then, so I'm in awe and amazed by all this, and plus got some Ganga Jal. In walks Krishnadas Babaji in his typical laugh, and she immediately is on it. Baba, I've got Ganga water, man. What they're saying, but they're both lit up, and she's this old and doing and done, they're taking water and Haribol, and they're going to see Prabhupada, and I went back in. And that's the time he jumped up on Prabhupada's bed, just came in, the rest of us obeisances, sitting around the bed. He just comes in and just literally just hops up on Prabhupada's bed and sits cross-legged right by Prabhupada's head. And starts singing, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. And we're all thinking, wow, he's not singing Prabhupada. He's singing Prabhupada's Prabhupada. That's who he's singing. He's not calling, singing. But we're not connecting any of the dots at the time, other than, the water. So every generation moves forward with one, a great loss, and the other, what they have, what survives. It may not be of the same quality, but the ideal must be preserved. And the people who may be of a lower achievement, but if they have that ideal, the flow connects. And new people who are coming in at the most base level are put on what Sridhar Maharaj called the right path. And when asked if he saw Krishna, he said, no, but I think I'm on the right path. Whereas Prabhupada would say, yes, I have seen God face to face. Why do you say dead? I have seen him, this and that. That's argumentum backwardum. That is not Vaishnava bhav. That's where he's just doing his duty. You say God is dead, I say I've seen him face to face, and it is Krishna, God is not dead, God lives. Chant Hare Krishna. I was there when some college kids asked Prabhupada in Hyderabad, have you seen Krishna? And I was like, oh gee, one of those questions. It was an evening darshan. These college kids came in, sat at the back. Prabhupada was on many ways. Swami, we have a question. Yeah, please. Have you seen Krishna? So then Prabhupada says, do you think we are fools? And immediately these boys are like frozen to their chairs, their seats. Prabhupada said, do you think we are fools? That we'll go on with this Hare Krishna and we have not seen Krishna? And then he goes, all of these foreigners, they have seen Krishna. I was sitting right close, hugging the neck. Wow, here we go again, stretching it for somebody's benefit. We have all seen Krishna. They have all seen Krishna. Hey, do you want to see Krishna? I can. No. Do you want to see Krishna? You don't want to see Krishna. You want to see Krishna? We'll come Mangal Arti tomorrow morning, Radha Damodar at 4:30. Krishna right there. And that's what Prabhupada said to them. Finally he said, do you want to see Krishna? And finally they said, yes, Swami. He said, you'll come tomorrow morning, Mangal Arti at 4:30. Krishna there. And then he went on about, we cannot see Krishna and Leela, this nonsense. You come here to the temple, Krishna is here. So we are engaged in the temple worship of this Astakaliya Leela. You're addressing Krishna if you are in such fortunate position. You're bathing Radha and Krishna. You're addressing him. I mean, you have to get Mother Yasoda out of the way in eternity before you can do that. But here, you're given a chance to do that, and doing that in Vrndavana. And people think, no, it's superior for just don't do anything, you just walk around the bridge and think about it. No, that's jumping way, way ahead. When the Vaishnava just thinks about it, is when he doesn't have capacity for that, do anything else for his Lord with this body, and it's become silent, then all going on internally in high performance mode. But we can't see that. But sometimes things are said, gestured, just little things, and they reflect on the depth of where that person is. But after that, immediate loss for everybody, total darkness, it seemed. But some people thought they carried the light. If you read, first, did you know that in every mutt that has a samadhi of Prabhupada's godbrother, who was an acharya, Madha Maharaj, Kishora Maharaj, Yajabara Maharaj, everybody, there's a special song for that guru at the samadhi. There's a samadhi artik song for Sridhar Maharaj. For every major disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta, and even some minor ones, there is an artik song. For Srila Prabhupada, we never wrote a song. We did in South India 20, 30 years ago. We wrote several songs glorifying Prabhupada, but one of them is the artik song. It's sung after we have a Pushpa Samadhi, so it's sung. Samsara Dava is a very generic mantra. It's not specific to the Guru. Shri Guru Charana Padma is another generic mantra for the Guru. But what happened was, this is so funny, what happened was, right after the disappearance of Prabhupada, they made a song glorifying the Chosen 11. It was made the first year. No song to glorify Prabhupada, but there was a song to glorify the new Gurus. And it was modeled on their modeled after Srila Maharaja's song Jai Sachinandana, Suruni Mandana. It was modeled on everything is Jais, and the names of Jai Murari Gupta, Jai this, Jai that, all the way through. The Jais are the principal associate. So the song was about the 11 and the glorification. There was no time of remorse, there was no time of sadness, there was no time of reflection. It was business as usual. Prabhupada's gone. We're going out to the airport. 9:15, the van leaves. Nothing stopped. I was in the Sankirtan Airport Center in what's that, St. Paul, Minneapolis, Radha Damodar Party Center. Myself and Mike Hotma and some others. Just out on Saturday. We didn't know what else to do. Just everything went. And it's true, when the devotees were called, Prabhupada wanted everybody to come. You couldn't imagine this. There was a meeting. Prabhupada, at least 1,000 devotees will come. No, let them come. Prabhupada, this will cost $1 million out of pocket. Let them come. Prabhupada, these will be your book distributors above all. Book distribution will virtually come to a stop. Let them come. Then the last thing was, send a telegram. So the telegram was sent for everybody to come to Prabhupada's side, all his disciples, as many as promised. In the end, nobody came. Had they come, could have changed history. Had they come, could have changed history. And why they didn't come? Financial consideration only. Book points consideration. And probably that's where we missed the greatest opportunity of ever. If everyone would have come, I would put forth the idea, Prabhupada may not have left. He could have stayed as long as Krishna wanted him to. The fact is, the desire to have Prabhupada here wasn't that strong. Keep him here. The guru of that quality is not kept here by prarabdha karma, number of breaths at birth, anything an astrologer can tell us, or anything other than the will of Krishna. And the intensity of the disciples is what holds. So my wake-up call was, after being a brahmachari book distributor for 6.5 years, I became a sannyasi, and suddenly I could enter Prabhupada's room, I could go on any morning walk, and guess what? I shared a room with other people. I never saw so much Maya in my life. I mean, brahmachari ashram, we were studying slokas, reading books. Sannyasi ashram was a bunch of goobers cutting up with jokes, hee-hawing around, spinning nunchucks and martial art. Prabhupada right downstairs. And that's when he sits on the vyasa the last time and asks for a Chitananda to sing. He isn't there. He asks for Brahmananda. He's not there. He asks for another one. He's not there. They're all upstairs goobering. And Prabhupada's on the vyasa side. And he's ill. And then finally he just sits there in silence in Mayapur. There's films of it. And then Jayatirtha asks. He leans over and says, I can sing, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada says, moves his hand. Jayatirtha sang. When he finished singing, he said the Jayams, and Prabhupada got up off the vyasana and went to his room and never sat on the vyasana to speak again. And that picture, if the film exists or parts of it, the picture is, I learned early on, if you sit next to Prabhupada, you can't hear anything he's saying. He's talking softly into a microphone. And if you're sitting a little behind him, you see all those pictures, all the sannyasis are gathered around. I figured out the best place to be is sitting by the speaker about, 30 feet over. And so I would sit by the speaker and I would look, and I could always see him clearly. That started me on a collision course with the status quo in ISKCON, because I wasn't joining the All Boys Club. I, with my danda, sat with the devotees where I could see and listen. I mean, I went up there and did the whole thing, but you can't. You're better off over here, a little distant and below, than trying to get so close. Morning walks, the same thing. Unless you were right next to Prabhupada, you couldn't hear him speak. And the whole thing was jockeying as you walked around the corner. Nobody wanted to push the other guy, but if you didn't come out on the inner circle when he spoke, you couldn't hear what he said. Gaudiya Math tried to tell us that Swami Maharaj was a Vai Babu. Swami Maharaj didn't take sannyas in the right corridor, in the right sector. We used to get this from the Gaudiya Math. Get this. He wasn't authorized to go to the United States. And we're all just fine. Yeah, right. Thank God he didn't wait for the authorization. He got the authorization from his guru and from God himself, and he went. But they were trying to tell us, one, he's not properly initiated because he took sannyas from Kishora Maharaj, who's out of the Gaudiya Math. Secondly, he was not authorized to go to the West, and his books weren't authorized. This is the first thing that used to come from yoga people. When ISKCON arrived on the scene. Prabhupada arrived in humble mood to send his devotees to yoga people. They said, sorry, no place here for your people, not even on the floor. Then Prabhupada decided to buy his own property. Had they not done that, he hadn't thought to make a center in Mayapur. It was because Achyutananda and them were rejected, or Rairam, whatever his name was rejected by Tirtha Maharaj. He wouldn't allow them to come to Gaur Purnima and even sleep on the floor in a hallway or a veranda. So sometimes a negative thing happens to make a positive. Like, who was it got insulted? Not Dhruva, the brother from Pandu, and what's his name? Dhritarashtra. What's his name? Who is insulted and leaves the family. Vidura. He's insulted and he leaves. If he hadn't left, well, so much would have gone on. So one day Prabhupada spat with his wife and he left. If she would have been the submissive Hare Krishna wife, so to speak, Prabhupada wouldn't have left home. Where would we be? Krishna made the arrangement. She hawked his Bhagavatams for tea biscuits. And Prabhupada said, tea or me? She said, well, of course, I never miss tea. And he walked away. But we say, all glories to Prabhupada. Because if she'd not been the instrument, he wouldn't have walked away. He'd have stayed right where he was. He was mortified about sannyas, he said. Mortified, but just think of it. Once there's a story, Govinda Maharaj comes running over as a young boy and says, oh, Baba, Sridhar Maharaj is calling you for prasadam. What prasadam? And Govinda was a boy, 16, 17, he said, usual morning muri means puffed rice. It's standard Septakadasi's and Sridhar Maharaj's temples and Gaudiya Math forever. Puffed rice is breakfast. Prabhupada says, puffed rice? That is cheating the stomach. Tell Sridhar Maharaj come here for Puri subject. This is how they live. Very sweet together. But the Ritvik idea tried to come forward at that time. There was a whole thing that didn't go. But you can see in ISKCON's time, Ritvik has taken root. Big, hundreds of millions of dollars, big temples beyond measured belief. It's like, how's it possible? Other things, so many things taking root. There are issues, major issues.
The root cause of this all is.
Excuse me?
The root cause of this all is not following the original books.
No, the root cause. Things were well. It's like a banyan tree. They say it's hard to figure out where it is. But there's no question. Devotees, if you knew them, you knew who they were. For example, one day Prabhupada says, this Swami, and he says his name to us, prays for me to die. And the rest of you pray for me to live. That was a GBC sannyasi who later became a guru. And Prabhupada, in his own words, before a group of devotees said, such and such, Swami prays for me to die, while the rest of you pray for me to live. Well, what is that? Well, that means the Maya was already there. There were disciples who put their own pictures on the altar before Prabhupada left this world, even years before. One was in Germany, one was in New Vrndavana. They had this become the guru thing in them, even while Prabhupada was living, what to speak of afterwards. So there were material designs. Who will be guru? And what that all means in terms of name, fame, popularity, Pratishta Kamini, and all the rest of it. No proper thinking Vaishnava thinks like that. To become guru, particularly right after it. And being appointed by the guru is a burden. It is a huge burden. Vrndavana Maharaj came, and after that was all settled, the will was read, he came to live 1 month in my ashram with no assistant. He didn't have anybody with him. He came alone and spent 1 month in my ashram just so he could think of what has to going forward. He came for some time alone just to think. But we never did that. Nothing skipped. Not a day's book distribution, not a Sunday feast, not a nada. And what people did do was, there was designs. Some people wanted to move into Prabhupada's rooms in Juhu. That was the first fight. And such person wanted to occupy the new rooms in the tower. Prabhupada had a 5th floor, marble, beautiful headquarters, which he only ever spent 3 nights in. The Guru wanted to take that over. That resulted in building the Guru his own marble palace on the mezzanine floor, which overlooks the balcony, which is now used as a darshan hall, but it's got a darshan hall, a bedroom, a marble kitchen. It was set up for the Guru in charge of it. The first announcement and meeting of the populace of Bombay, a meeting was called. Nearly 1,000 life members, top people came. And when the curtain opened, there was the new Guru sitting on a gigantic red seat. And even the Hindus thought this was a little bit pretentious. So soon after the disappearance of Prabhupada, these kind of things are being shown. So anyway, there are stories, but there were many things and it built it up to throwing devotees out by the thousands, and it finally culminated in an offense to Srila Maharaj. And after that, it looks like it's broken. It's not bent. It's broken. Lots and lots of things. But they've apologized for that 3 or 4 times in writing. That's not a secret. The GBC's apologized. The problem is there's been no rectification after apology. Like I'll say, I don't want apologies. Just do the right thing. Even when somebody, like, something happens, you may think to yourself, look, I don't need an apology from you. Like a neighbor or something has encroached on you. I just need you to do the right thing. I'm not here to humiliate you or make an apology. Do the right thing. That's what they feel every time. You don't do the right thing. They don't correct people of the incorrect vision that they preached of Sridhar Maharaj for decades. They don't correct it. People have to find it on their own. Or someone speaks up for it, and after a while, this place gets banned and nobody comes here to see your beautiful cows. The pill that has to be swallowed is bitter. So, then the rumor will spread that I've come here and I'm trying to steal men and women from ISKCON. Same old. They do it every time. That's why we're a little shy of getting too close. So here we are today, 2016, 21st century. Books are important, and to discuss those books with like-minded souls, very important. And any of the, senior or older association who can bring to our ear both anecdote and substance is helpful. That is helpful for us. But I can tell you that the disciple in the right situation has a different vision of his guru, regardless of what a godbrother may think or anybody else. There's a zone of privacy between guru and disciple. That's a gorilla. Look at that. Look at that. Wow. And you're not protected. In Radha Damodar, we all live in cages. The monkeys roam free. We hide in cages, you know.
The monkeys come to the zoo there.
Yeah, the monkeys come and throw peanuts at us. Well, I'm bending over to look for some. No, I think I was cutting my fingernails, something in a garbage can, and I bend over, and all of a sudden, there go my glasses. The monkey just goes whoop, whoop,
Through the grill.
through the grill.
And he's outside the grill. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I wouldn't think anyone can change the course of the movement, because it looks like it's already divided up, because everybody just does what they want. You can't talk something into Shivaram that he doesn't want to do. No matter what anybody says or votes, he's going to do what he's going to do. And he's backed by his disciples, and it's a done deal. You're not going to change anything. And you just go around the world. It's like that. It might be a householder in charge, a sannyasi, a guru. But it's just everybody's kind of doing what they think is the best thing to do. Some people are more this way, more that way. Some people have got total anarchy. Some people got total Hinduism. Other people are, more like traditional. Like in Philadelphia, they chant Krishnaya Kachetana. You know that poem? I need the paper to see. It's the prayers that Shastri wrote for Prabhupada. Well, Prabhupada wanted them sung in all his temples. It was sung for a year, and then it just faded off. In one temple in ISKCON, do they sing these prayers? They were written by a devotee called Shastri. He was Bengali, I think. He wrote 5 Sanskrit prayers glorifying Prabhupada. And every morning, in the last year of Prabhupada's presence, those prayers were sung when he came out of his room to greet him. These prayers, he liked them very much. And they were sung all over the world in that time. By this time this year, in ISKCON, they're sung maybe in only one temple. That's Philadelphia. Ravinda Swarupa's kept that. And they recite those before they do Guru Puja, keeping it alive. So when we love somebody, when things are important, these things should not fade away so easily. Either the external memorabilia, we should not lose the feeling that we have for that, what we call memorabilia, the divinity of his cloth, his shoe, or any of these things have not diminished from day one. They are the same. We have to preserve those things, but the most important thing is to preserve the correct process and understanding of bhakti yoga, because that's what's produced all this. The holy name made all of this. Not an inheritance, not us collecting, not technique. Actually, the holy name has manifested all the opulence of the Krishna consciousness. Now you can challenge me and say, well, wait a minute. We're really, really opulent. Krishna is manifesting a lot of opulence. How can you say something's wrong? So I was speaking ideally. Vaishnava aparad is also another cause of material opulence for Vaishnava. Maybe we should go commit a couple aparads, because we sure could use some cash. Then repent the aparads, keep the cash. To the point where I said, yeah, elaborate worship and followers and great wealth also come due to Vaishnava aparad. Tricky business, Krishna consciousness. Yeah, that's there. It's amazing to see people new, like I guess you call it a new surgence of people appreciating some. It's like the shade is appreciated when you're really burning in the sun. You can't take it no more. then it seems like maybe that's what it requires. People just to be hammered so hard, you just got to look somewhere else to find what they're missing, what they're lacking. All right, let's wind it up here. Open and go.